Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the AAW virtual live event with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop. I'm Mike Z.
I'm Chris.
I'm Scott.
And Scott's joining us today as a technical advisor to wood turning because something Chris and I don't do as frequently as we would like to. But we can definitely answer questions pertaining to abrasives, finishes, pretty much anything else other than wood turning at a wood turning symposium. So that's why we brought Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Hey.
But feel free to ask us questions, make comments. We are on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on another Facebook page. And then, of course, we are at the AAW Virtual Symposium in the trade show booth. So anything that'll work for you will work for us.
Just from the comments I'm seeing go through on the AAW comment section, it looks like they're not seeing anything from the trade show yet.
Oh, are you under event?
I'm under the chat. There are people are saying they're not seeing anything even in the trade show.
Right. So there at the top of that, there's event and booth. So event is all of the event, the whole thing. Booth is our booth. Just letting you know as far as that goes. So when you click on booth, that'll be just our booth. And what if people are asking us directly questions? Event is everybody.
Okay, the only thing I'm seeing is event.
Yeah, you have to go click the trade show icon down at the bottom left on the sidebar, and then you can search for Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
you gotta click on that.
And then you can come into our booth that way. And then the way this is set up, the event tab, well, it'll both the chat options will be on the right. There'll be an event and a booth, but you gotta get into our booth first.
I'm looking for it now.
And if you're not part of the AAW, that is the American Association of Wood Turners. That's basically a large woodworking club for wood turners, and they have a symposium. What is it? Every year, but it's every year, but it switches the country as far as it's on one side or the other. And so this year they're doing virtual as well as in person, if I'm not mistaken, because they've got some turners demonstrating too.
I'm thinking it's all virtual this year.
It's all virtual this year.
Yeah, they're doing the even the demos are virtual. You have to sign up to go into the virtual booth.
I wonder if we can sneak into some booths while we're here, because that would be fun. We could heckle.
Yeah, like we didn't have enough to do.
All right, so because it's the AAW, and we decided that, not just for the AAW members, but for everybody who watches Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, that we would have a sale this weekend. It's good till Wednesday. But basically what we're going to be looking at is 25% off wood turning books, 20% off select abrasives, which is mostly 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inch, 3 inch discs, 10% off bandsaw blades, 10% off Robert Sorby, 10% off Arbortech products, and 10% off Chromacraft finishes, CA glues, and Crown products.
It's a good allotment there.
It's a good allotment. So if you're looking to get into wood turning or something that possibly you already know someone who is or yourself, now's a good time to grab onto some of these things that are wood turning related.
And a lot of wood turners may not be familiar or may not even know what that Chromacraft is, but that stuff is fantastic. They've got some really good colors, as well as they've got a product called Web Effects. I'm a huge fan of that. And it creates a web look, but it's a slightly raised finish, and it really makes it look like a spider webbing, but it can be really artistic, especially on bowls and platters. So,
let's see if I have, let's see. I've got all kinds of
fan of that
stuff. Yeah, you used it. So with Chris, he's got a CNC machine, and he had a toolbox, and he made the front very unique looking and cool by using that Web Effects. You did silver paint with red Web Effects, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, you don't have a picture of that?
I believe the official term is terracotta.
Oh, my apologies. Just looking to see. I don't have that, so let me do this.
And you can adjust the amount of webbing. It's almost like silly string in a way, but you can adjust the amount of webbing based on how close you are and how slow you make your pass. And trust me, it's not like a traditional finish where you want to take a nice, even, slow pass. You want to breeze past it fairly quickly just to get that sort of crackle spatter effect.
It looks like the horsehair ceramics based off of that. Where
Do
they put
tell
the
me more.
horsehair, where they put the horsehair in it when they do the final coat on the ceramics in the furnace, and it burns in, and it has that effect on it. If you ever see the pots and stuff with the weird, looks like almost the Etchenberg burn lines in it, it's typically horsehair or something like that. They put in it, and they put it in the last heat and burn it on.
Tell you what, learn something new every day. I had no idea that was a thing.
It's I think Mojave Indians out towards in the desert, they do a lot of that. It's really cool looking.
Taking a look at everything we got going on here. We do have a comment. Mr. Rob. Good morning, sir. How's your Powermatic lathe doing? So, yeah, don't know what he was on.
That's the one thing about live shows versus virtual that I miss, though. When you ask a question, it's an instant answer that you hear.
Yeah, that's true.
Now you got to wait on someone to type it out, and it's.
Oh, there you go. See, he said it was awesome.
That is cool. I love mine too. I've had mine now, I guess, for what, 20 years or close to it. The original 4224.
How many spindles have you gone through?
None. Actually, it's the tool post.
Oh, Lord.
I broke in like 4. And 1 hand wheel for the tailstock.
Yeah, Scott's not a traditional wood turner. He's aggressive. Would be
slightly,
the way to say it.
Slightly.
That would be a fair word.
That would be aggressive. A fair word. And I wish I had the video where I'd taken video at that time. There was a symposium in 2016, I think. You were testing out the Arbortech on like this Australian burl, and then you went to turn it.
Right.
And it's like this, the lathe's vibrating, it's off center or off balance. And you got this tool and there's chips flying. And I mean, it's making a lot of racket, but Scott has this composure to him where it's not like he's Hulk Hogan trying to jam that tool in there. He's just so composed and calm, and he's just talking to this lady while he's doing it. And I mean, it just seems like a bunch of racket. It was pretty funny to watch. It really was.
I don't know. The funniest thing I ever saw was when Chris dove behind the wall when we was at this extravaganza, when I was splitting some logs in half because I didn't have a bandsaw or didn't want to crank up the chainsaw first thing in the morning to rip some logs in half so I'd have bowl blanks.
How long ago was that?
Oh, that's been a while, ain't it, Chris?
Yeah, it's one of the earlier extravaganzas.
Yeah.
Well,
I was using McNaughton Center Saver parting tool, or the straight as a parting tool, splitting probably 10, 12-inch hunks of log in half like you'd run it through a bandsaw or a chainsaw through it.
There we go. So what we're referring to is in October, Klingspor's Woodworking Shop typically has a woodworking extravaganza, which is basically all forms of woodworking that we put on our own show. It's free to the public. This year, it's not going to be in person. We are going to be doing it virtually. But for 20 years, it's been a thing. And so there's a lot of stories, I'm sure, behind that. But yeah, it's where all the vendors get together and celebrate the wonderful world of woodworking.
Fun show. Been going on since 2001, and it has drastically grown every year, with the exception of last year, which we had to do virtually.
Yeah, Rob just made a comment that he broke his second bowl on his Powermatic because the speed control is a bit sensitive. It is, but at least it's very responsive when you do touch it. Unlike some of them, it does have some of a delay. So once you get used to it, you'll love it. Unlike your Jet, where it kind of seems like it delays ramping up and down, the Powermatic's very responsive. It has because it's a variable speed or VFD type drive, so it's actually 120 volt in or 220 in, and it's actually converting it to 480 to adjust the speed. So it's very sensitive to touch.
See, that's amazing. I wouldn't have known that whatsoever.
I knew it had a VFD, that's about it.
That's because of the electrical engineering side. Sorry.
Say, where else are you going to find that kind of in-depth, very simple to follow, just explanation of it? Oh, so what's the other thing we've got going on? So okay, if you're not familiar with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, why don't we introduce who we are exactly? I'm Mike Z. I'm in charge of the marketing and the technical specialist for Klingspor's Woodworking Shop. Chris, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Mike's sidekick.
Don't know about that.
Yeah, whatever. But I'm also handling some of the technical, but I specialize in CNC and your general woodworking needs. So
You've also been here a long time.
yeah, started it around 2001, and so I've been around and worked in the store, worked in the back, pretty much wherever they need me.
And now you're stuck in a room with a microphone. You've moved on up. And Scott, what brings you to Klingspor's Woodworking Shop? What is the story?
All right. How I got started with it actually is wood turning. When I started wood turning, basically me working with a guy building computers got me started in wood turning. We were building PCs and stuff like that in an old hog barn, and it was segmented off. We had part of it for the computer shop. The other side of the piece that he had some woodworking equipment in it, and he had a shop smith and a few other oddball pieces. And he had to wind up moving out of the hog barn into a regular place, and he didn't have room to put his woodworking equipment where he was going. So he was going to rent a mini storage. So wound up saying, hey, don't do that. If you want to, just bring it over to our house, put it in the basement, and you want to come over anytime and use it, whatever. It sat there for about a year and a half, and he hadn't used it, and he came up and said he was going to sell it. So I wound up buying it. So there's where the addiction started. So I dragged this thing out in the backyard and put the little wheels in the ground, trying to stabilize as best I could. And I'd chase that thing around for hours to turn a little bitty bowl. So that got the wood turning addiction started. And since I kind of winged it to start off with, not knowing what I was doing, somebody said, hey, there's a woodworking shop up in Hickory. They actually have a club up there, the National or North Carolina Wood Turners Association, North Carolina Wood Turners, which is part of the AAW. And so I came up to see a meeting, and actually, no, I came up just to see what was in the store. Then Chris, I think, told me about the club. And so I came back and then started join the club. I'm a life member now, been on and off the board probably 10 plus years. But anyhow, that's what got me started in wood turning. And the kind of the progression I went from a Shopsmith, an old 500 series, to a Powermatic 4224. So, just a minor jump in quality and stability in the middle.
Yeah, just a little.
That what I was taking, hours to turn on the Shopsmith, I could do in 10, 15 minutes with the Powermatic. So, yes, the equipment does make a big difference. And
well, Scott, you've progressed a whole lot more than that. How many mini lathes do you have now?
I don't even know, probably 10 or 15.
If you've never experienced one of our extravaganzas, you have no clue. Scott has a bunch of mini lathes that he's got set up that he brings and does some work with us on that. So yeah, he does a lot of education and teaching and shares his knowledge. So if you're ever up in Hickory and you hear about that extravaganza, and definitely come by and check it out, because Scott's pretty much going to be there. So
yeah, even the last time we wasn't virtual, I just had a hip replacement, and I wound up hanging out in the Crown booth because I couldn't stand at the lathe at that point. And so I hung out in the Crown booth answering questions for everybody. By the way, if you don't know Cryo Tools, it's a family business, and they're very and they actually take a lot of pride in their tools, and it's, really the owners and the kids of the owners, if there's somebody out in the shop or whatever, for whatever reason, they step in and do whatever in their facility. It's kind of an interesting company. Nice people to know.
good quality tools as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, I have to ask this question because it's always been on my mind. Robert Sorby and Cryo Tools are both from Sheffield, England. Are they
Yes.
really near each other? Because I heard they were
Yes.
literally across the street.
Yes. Well, I don't know if they're that close, but their tools still, since I'm an electrical engineer and I actually work for a bearing manufacturer, and we have a metal labs. And I've taken one crown tool and a Robert Sorby tool into the lab just to check them out and see what their metal makeups were and how their heat treat process is and everything. The high-speed steel crown and the high-speed steel Robert Sorby, if you take them and do a metal makeup on them, you can't tell the difference in them. They're almost identical. More than likely, the steel is made in the same place, and they're just worked from there by the different manufacturers.
Gotcha. So basically, they're getting the stock bar and then grinding it down to the shape that they need for that particular tool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. First noticed here at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, the truth behind the Crown and Sorby tools.
Now, Crown has some different flavors of steel or versions of steel, where Sorby pretty much is all high-speed steel, where they've got their tin-coated, the kind of the gold-looking, which just has a thin layer on the outside. I don't think they have any of the higher or different grades of steel that they're running, or at least the last that I've looked. But Crown does offer their powder metal, their cryo, which is the powder metal, which is cryogenically treated afterwards, where they take it down close to 0 degree Kelvin shortly after the heat treat process, then bring the temperature back up. It realigns the grain structure to make it tighter. So you get a longer edge life and a finer edge on it than you would with a standard powder metal. And they also have I think it's their M42, which is a different grade of steel, which they also do a cryo treatment on to bring that grain structure tighter and keep a long edge life.
Now, what's the best way to sharpen that?
Basically, whichever method that you want to learn, whether it's like with a bench grinder, a belt sander, freehand, the different jigs like the Wolverine system or whatever, as long as you learn to use it correctly and don't overheat the tools, you'll be fine. The key is to learn to use whatever system you get, so you just don't chew up the tool and overheat it. My personal preference, if anybody's ever been around me, knows it's a Tormek. The main reason is my shop is very dirty. It doesn't get cleaned often because I don't have a lot of time to play in it otherwise. So when I'm down there, I'm wanting to turn. So I don't want to chew a lot of tool up. I don't want sparks going anywhere, take a chance of catching a fire, which a Tormek's perfect for that. You got a wet grind, start at 90 RPM. And especially with the different wheel options you've got now, you've got your standard stone, then you've got your Japanese water stones, you've got that black oxide stone, which is a good removal stone, and then you got all your diamond stones now, so you've got your fine, medium, and coarse grits. And with all your options there, you can do about anything that you want, and you don't have to worry about overworking your stone or your tool and heating it up, because at 90 RPM and wet, it's never going to get hot. You can actually take it no matter what and put your hand on the stone and you're not going to get hurt. Whether you're bench grinders, first of all, caveat here, please don't use a 3600 RPM bench grinder. It's just way too fast. You'll burn your tool up and you'll eat way too much tool steel. You won't get the life out of the tool. Get you one to 1750 RPM bench grinder like the Rikon, and I'm not sure who else makes the smaller or the slower speed, but the Rikon definitely makes one, and it does a good job with it. It keeps the speed about half. And whether you're learning to freehand or use one of the jig systems, light touches, don't hold it, and quench it frequent. I've talked to our metallurgists in the plant, even though they say if you discolor high-speed steel or your cryo slightly, it's not going to damage it, but it does change the metal makeup. I mean, it may not affect the edge life greatly, but if you do change the color, you do change the metal, the edge retention. So try not to overheat the tool. But if you're using a jig setup, you can light touches, quick motion back and forth. Don't hold it in one place. Where with the Tormek, I can be talking to you, not paying attention to what I'm doing. If I leave it setting for a second, I don't do any damage. If you're using one of the Wolverine or the other systems like that, and you do that on high-speed grinder, you're chewing a lot of tool up. So you just get a lot of extra life out of if you're paying attention, or if you're using a slow speeds grinder, especially if you're learning. The slow speed makes a big difference, so you can focus on the areas and get the shape that you want without chewing a lot of tool and accidentally making a mistake. It's harder to make a mistake and chew a lot of tool on the Tormek.
I think we've even got a video that we'll probably be showing soon that talks about utilizing those tools in the sharpening, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, that is correct. So Scott did do a video for us a little while ago that was basically how to create an Ellsworth grind from home, so you don't have to purchase that particular grind. But I just want to say real quick, Rob had asked, catch up on the comments, apologize. He likes the crown tools, but he's noticed the lack of turning tools at the store in Cary. Have there been shipping issues? It's not so much shipping issues as much it is logistics in England, where they had slowed down manufacturing for a little while due to some sort of worldwide issue. And with that said, then it has to come over on a boat. So right now it should be actually arriving this month, both Sorby and Crown. And then therefore, once we get all those tools in, then they get distributed to the stores. But yeah, there has been a little bit of a decline in having some stock and some things. But if you order any of the Crown or Sorby tools at 10% off for the weekend, and we don't have it in stock, then as soon as they come in, you'll get them. So, it may not be right away, but it may be, I think it's 2 weeks out is what we're looking at right now. But
yeah, it's a short window.
Yeah, it's not very long like some other things are. They've been a little bit more delayed. Scott, I do want to ask, so if you are a new wood turner, someone who's starting out, and you're wanting to get into sharpening, what are you talking about as far as changing the color and having the bench grinder too fast, and you're removing too much material, you're getting it too hot? What is something they should do or look for? Because when you taught me how to sharpen turning tools, I love the Sharpie method, and we'll show that in the video, but I just want to help out anyone who's beginning.
All right, to start off with, if you're getting the tools straight off the shelf, if you're already buying something with an Ellsworth style grind on it, go ahead and tell you when you put it in whatever jig you're using, it's going to change. So you're not going to keep that exact profile. It's going to, because their jig is going to be set up slightly different than what you're doing. So personally, I'd say save the extra 10 or 15 bucks to get it from an Ellsworth and get just the standard bowl gouge with the traditional English style grind, where it has the sharp wings that come straight up instead of the swept back, and then do it yourself. But the color bit is, if you take even a nail and you take a torch to it and you stick it in the torch and you pull it back, you see it gets this blue or dark tint to it. That's where I'm talking about discoloration. Basically, discoloration from the heat. And as I said, all the sharpening methods will work, and they'll work fine. The Sorby Sharp Fast with the belt sander is probably a little more forgiving than a bench grinder. The only problem with it is when you're, in my opinion, once you get used to it, if you're using something that has an arc in it, like a grinding stone that has that curve, your belt sander's flat. So you're not going to have in your relief cut on your cutting edge, you're not going to have that slight curve to it inside of it. And it just feels a little different when you're turning once you get used to it. I find it to be a little less catchy if it has that slight arc in it. Now, nothing against the Sorby. Once you get used to it, you'll probably be fine with it. I just haven't used it enough to do that, but I have sharpened with it, and it does make a nice sharp edge. And actually, their jigs are they have the very similar profile to the Wolverine and the Tormek system. There's the Tormek that he's got popped up on the screen right now. That looks like the base setup, which does for the planer blades and chisel blade, and chisel, not the planer, the chisels on it. You'll need the wood turning set, or at least just get the bowl gouge attachment. Most everything else for wood turning you can do freehand, but the one that I would definitely recommend is get the bowl gouge attachment for a Tormek, because it is hard to freehand that profile and keep it consistent without eating a lot of extra tool.
Yeah, the key behind that is repeatability, though, correct?
Yes. And the thing is, once you get the profile set to what you want, all thing you want to do is touch it up. You don't want to have to change that shape every time you go back to sharpen, because every time you do that and you're taking off extra metal, that's extra life that you could be on the lathe making real wood chips and mulch. So, and here's a little philosophy for everybody: go down to the shop with intention of making mulch, and if you come with out with something else like a bowl or a pin or whatever, it's a bonus. You won't be disappointed. So, like the guy said earlier, I broke my second bowl. No, you just didn't come out with that extra piece, but you still got a big bunch of mulch to use in the garden around your trees. So look at it as still a plus. You got to spend time in the shop. You didn't necessarily get your bowl that you was looking for, but you got a lot of mulch in the process. It'll make your outcome a lot more enjoyable if you put it in that type of perspective.
Well, and if you got a pressure pot, you could take all your shavings up, put them in a pressure pot with some epoxy, and make another bowl.
Yep, you can do that too. And actually, I've done that once or twice because people say, "What do you do with your shavings? You can't do it again." I'm like, "Yeah, you can." Mike, we got a question come up on the virtual side. Is there a coupon code for the discount? You're muted, Mike.
It shouldn't be. It should be. It should just happen out naturally. We've got that set up in our system. So if you go and you put that item in your cart, it will automatically be reflected as to the discounted price.
Should kind of like how we showed on the website there, where it had the sale price. Here, let me bring that back up. It is. So it's $775, normally $750 on sale. So the on sale price will show up and says that you save $25. So it's automatic. There is no coupon needed. If we want to, you can use, let me do this, but you can use FS July 21 if you would like to save on free shipping for orders of, I think it's $40 or more. Let me throw that out there.
So it sounds like Rob's starting to do or is doing some turquoise inlaying all on his bowls. So he's got a piece of walnut on there right now, and he's going to do a turquoise inlay in it. Very nice.
That is very nice. Yeah, he's been around as far as with the extravaganzas. We've known him for a couple of years now. He's in a lot of the maker kind of groups on Facebook, so I get to see the progression of what he does a lot of times. And I have to say he's progressing very quickly. I think like he's really picking it up and running with it. So he's been having a lot of fun with it. Hey, he had a lot of questions in the beginning, but now he's really taking off and going somewhere. So it's great to watch.
I want to ask Rob a question. Is he using true turquoise or is he using dyed halite? For people that don't know, my wife does a lot of lapidary work, and so I've kind of got into it as well. And basically that's stone work, shaping stones from rough cut, slabbing it out, and that type of thing. Turquoise is getting very hard to come by, and it's expensive if you get real turquoise. A lot of what people are pushing off as turquoise is actually dyed halite, and it looks a lot like turquoise, but the color is much more consistent in it. So, and it's also a lot cheaper. So if you're trying to use real turquoise, you may want to look for dyed halite. And it may save you some money, and it'll give you the same effect, especially since you're not using big chunks in your inlay.
And that's the Scott tip of the day.
There you go. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. I thought it was a lot shorter. I was wrong. He uses the metal cutting grinder to cut it even.
You're talking about to true the rim up after you epoxy it in?
Even. Okay. Yeah, good old turquoise. Go ahead.
Yeah, because whenever you put an inlay in like that, it's hard to, unless you inset the ring that you're putting it in. There's a lot of times you'll have pieces come up over the top, and so he'll have to grind it down or do something to smooth it out. And halite and turquoise does work easily like that.
And Klingspor's Woodworking Shop offers quite a few braces that work spectacularly on some stonework.
Like what kind of abrasives work fantastically on stonework there, Chris?
There are some aluminum oxide products as well as some silicon carbide. Silicon carbide would leave a nice, clean, consistent edge, and would allow you to polish that out much more easily.
Fantastic information. Oh, I want to skip over that. Here we go. So speaking of Klingspor abrasives, we have 20% off on all of our 1-inch, 1.5-inch, 2-inch, and 3-inch sanding discs in both the 10-pack, 50-pack in latex, film, our new green tech, and so much more. So remember, woodworkingshop.com, 20% off on all of your specialty sanding abrasives for sanding bowls and 2-inch and so on.
I wonder if the fusion foam is included in that. If you're doing a lot of the turquoise and other sort of semi-stone type materials, that does really well. It goes up very high, and would allow you to literally polish that out with using nothing but abrasives.
Well, let me check the list here, because I knew that I saw Klingnet was in there.
Let me go ahead and tell you the white diamond or the polish and paste used on a Tormek on a leather, a piece of leather on the grind or your sanding pad will actually polish out any of the fine scratches and give you the like your finished surface on your stones. That's what I use actually to finish the cabochons that we make. Is actually I take them to the Tormek and finish them on the leather strop.
Cool.
It actually does better than most of the lapidary options that are available.
So I was checking the stock list, and fusion foam is not included in that. Film, latex, stearate film, silicon carbide, scalloped discs, all of those heavyweights, True Blues, Green Techs, and Klingnet are all included, but not the fusion foam.
Okay.
There's a comment that just popped up on the virtual symposium side saying need sandpaper light green back for hand sanding. They use it at Aramont, about 4-inch wise rolls. Is that included in the sale?
The rolls are not included this year. And I don't know of a light green paper back other than green.
I wonder if you're talking about the gold, the blue. We've got a couple of good materials that are fantastic for wood turning. One is our gold. That is by far the wood turner's favorite, just simply because it just does not wear out and it doesn't load real easy at all. And it's extremely flexible, which makes it perfect for most of your wood turning needs. Alternatively, we've also got a product called a shop roll, and that is probably one of my favorites for doing general sanding. But wood turners still, I would say the gold would be a favorite item for that application.
Yes, and the bargain bin is a great place to get it.
Yes. So if you are in North Carolina, we have 4 retail stores, and in those retail stores, we have the only thing in the country, which is sandpaper by the pound. We have large Gaylord boxes full of scraps, rolls, full rolls, discs, you name it. Everything's in that box, and you can pick out whatever you want, and you can weigh it and pay it by the pound. The LS312, the gold that Chris was mentioning, is actually the backdrop that we have here for our live show. And so if it's a light blue like that with that gold color on the other side, that is the wood turner's dream sandpaper. And let's see here.
Yeah, John, that can be hand torn. As a matter of fact,
yes.
it tears extremely easily. I've actually made a couple of different roll dispensers, and that it tears so easily because it's a flexible cloth. So it tears nice and even and straight as well. Unlike with paper that can have a little bit of a jagged edge, that cloth tears real smooth, and you can tear it to length. And there's a variety of widths of the rolls as well. So I think you can get them in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I think those are the sizes.
The roll. I'm gonna find you the rolls real quick, and then send you a link in the in our trade show, and then as well as I'll put a link for everyone else watching the show outside of the AAW. Let me just find it. I don't see 4-inch wide though, but I know we have them. But Did you explain to him what the type of cotton backing is? Because Chris, this is your wheelhouse, buddy.
Well, unlike traditional cloth that's like a, kind of thick and stiff, this is an Egyptian cloth, and it's very, very flexible. Matter of fact, you can actually pinch it and fold it over on itself, and this gold material will not make a crease. You do that with any other sandpaper, and you're going to wind up having a break where the grain is. The gold does that very uniquely, and that flexible cloth also helps dissipate the heat. So when you're doing a lot of sanding, especially in your in a wood turning application where the bowl is going round and round, being able to dissipate that heat easily and not load will certainly make a difference. That gold color is actually there's a stearate or a lubricant that's on there. It's a multi-bond lubricant, and that in itself is designed for metal, but it works great in the wood turning application because the purpose is to reduce heat and friction. Well, in wood turning applications, you're going to produce a lot of heat and friction, and that typically breaks down the grain and causes it to load. Well, using this material, because of the way it was manufactured, you're able to get a much longer life out of the product and a much better result as well.
All right. Also, with that yellow material, if you're turning green wood, it will load up fairly quick with any sandpaper. But you can take it and smack it on the lathe on the cloth side down, and most of it will pop out. You can take an air compressor, blow it out, or you can take it and actually fold it in half, like Chris was saying, where most people will break it and run it back and forth in your hand like this, and it'll pop out. So you've got several options to clean it out if you are turning green wood with it, and you just slap it back on and keep on going.
We have a comment from Mr. Sterling Davis. He missed us yesterday. Thanks in advance. Chris, winky face punch, explosion punch.
Okay. Well, no problem. I'm here for you, brother.
What was it, 826 miles? That's all I'm going to say. That's all I know. And Rob says he's from the Southwest, so he is adverse to using fake. No
He's
kidding.
talking about the turquoise.
Yeah, talking about the turquoise again. Well, he was before. So, gold rolls, yes, you can do a lot with them. Now, can you sand with them wet? Technically, yes, but eventually the cloth back will start to stretch out. So you do have to be careful with that. So when you're sanding with green wood, you can actually sand with almost any cloth material wet, but you just have to be careful that it will start to loosen up the glue bond between the cloth and the sandpaper itself, the grit. So you just got to be careful.
Now, here's what you can do is you can actually rinse it out and just lay it on a line to dry or lay it out to dry. Once it's dry, then you can go and use it again without the fear of a lot of that stretching. It's just while it's wet, you just don't use it while it's wet on a consistent basis. But if you're buying these rolls for quick knockoff jobs, this works really well. You could use it wet, and when you're done, just toss it and be done with it.
Absolutely.
Well, most of the time when you're turning with the green wood anyway, you're only using it for a short period. Knock it out before. The key is to knock out all the build-up sand gunk in it before you set it off to the side to go to the next grit, so it don't bond in it or dry in it and make it really hard to get out when it dries. So if you can get it out while it's still wet, you can get a lot more life out of the paper. But I've never had a problem with it coming loose while sanding, the grit coming loose or the stretch. I never noticed it.
So yeah, and you won't notice it much. It'll just be one of those sort of random things that you'll start to notice if you're using it a lot. And in most of the wood turning applications, you're using it fairly quickly, so you're not gonna really notice it.
I probably wouldn't care either.
I was going to say that it's not uncommon for people to actually take their belts to the pressure washer. And like I've seen people take wide belts, for instance, but if you have like a very long strip of a particular type of abrasive you like the gold, you can hang it up on the floor mats on the side of a pressure washer, like a car wash, and blast it out as well. And as long as, like Chris saying, as long as you let it dry, you can go back to using it again. There's your abrasive tip from an abrasive manufacturer for you, that if you want to take the time to pressure wash, which I think it's what, $5 to start that now, you can, or you can just buy another gold roll. It's up to you, but it is possible.
And Mr. Fox Hall, it appears that Sterling is watching over on our Facebook channel, so feel free to go check
harass him
that
there.
out. Yeah, you don't need the link to the AAW to harass him. You can do it right from our Facebook channel.
But I did send in the link so everyone knows where you need to go if you wanted to get involved with the AAW. Scott, tell me more about the AAW. Like, I'm curious.
All right,
From a member side.
It's an American Association of Woodturners. It isn't just America. It is a global group. It's people all over the world. And it's basically just an organization where all the woodturners kind of get together and share ideas and concepts, and it's focused on wood turning. Unlike a lot of the other groups, that do flat stuff and square stuff, which wood turners, no flat, no square. We want curves and edges. Do what?
You don't make platters?
But most of them still have curve. But anyhow, it's just a good group of people to learn different tips and tricks. And the best way to learn about wood turning is to go find one of the local clubs, and most of them will let you sit into a couple meetings without joining or whatever. And the same thing with our club in Hickory whenever we start back up, because we're still not meeting from the big event on a regular basis. More than welcome to come for a few meetings, and if you like it, join. If not, you're not out of anything other than a couple hours of time. But you learn so much just by watching somebody else turn, better than trying to pick up a book or you can pick up a lot from watching on YouTube, but it's always good if you can, ask a question, and they'll answer it right then, or you can see a different perspective than what they're trying to push on you from the camera. So like with our club, you can actually walk around to a different point and get a different reference point to where you're wanting to see happen. So it does make a big difference. And if you're familiar with any wood turner, unlike potters, glass makers, blowers, whatever, we aren't secretive people. We'll tell you everything you want to know, plus more than you ever cared to hear, and keep on going. So you'll get more information than you really wanted. You may be in overload, but you'll totally get the information you're wanting, plus a whole lot more if you ask questions and come to one of the club meetings.
Yeah, that's the truth. If you get a conversation started with a wood turner, and you start engaging with them, you can find out pretty much everything about the process. There's nothing to hide with a wood turner.
Well, and then you get the guy who hears that conversation, comes up and says, well, that's not how I do it. I do it like this. And so you're going to get multiple ways to do the same thing, which, is good. Plus, most of the time you've got a table of goods that what you've turned or whatever, and you can see, maybe get inspired just from what you've seen other people do. So,
yep.
All right. Also, one other thing about just the whole concept of, talking to a bunch of people, say this is the only way to do it. There's only a few caveats like that in wood turning. Don't use spindle tools on face plates, because the way the tang goes into the handle, it narrows down and it's a weak point. So you're going side grain, in grain, side grain, in grain on a face plate type turning, which way the grain runs like this and it turns like this on the lathe. You're going to get different forces based off of that, and it's going to work hard in that tool, and it'll snap right at the handle. That's the only real thing that you got to take with okay, this is one thing you don't want to do just so you don't get hurt. If somebody says this is the only way to hold the tool to do something, take it with a grain of salt, because there are some people out there, they'll say this is the only way to do it, and if you do it any other way, it's wrong. No, do what works for you. Like if you watch me turn, and as I said earlier, I start on a shop smith. I turned completely backwards from most people because that was the only way I could get it to turn and actually remove stock without just totally bogging the machine down. So I typically turn backwards on a lot of things. If you watch me, I'm doing the opposite direction than most people. So you take all that over with a grain of salt. And as long as you get your end result that you're looking for, you're okay.
One of these days, I'd love to see you turn on a shopsmith the way you turn on your Powermatic.
I do the same. I do, but I can't do a heavy cut. That's the problem. I can take a heavier cut on my Midi lathe than I could on the shopsmith.
That's where I got started turning, was on my shopsmith. So I fully understand.
I even put the reduction gear on the shopsmith and couldn't take a heavy cut on it.
JP asked the question about what's the best lathe to get started with, and that's kind of a loaded question, but
That's a very
really,
big catch-22.
yeah, I mean, they're just like with turning. There's no exact answer, but a good mini lathe is pretty good place to start. Rikon, Jet both make really good mini lathes, and if if that's what you're looking to do is small bowls and pins, you can't go wrong with those. And that going that route also gives you the little more freedom to be able to afford getting into some of the tooling as well.
All right, if you're wanting to do small bowls and vessels, let me go ahead and give you this little caveat. Look for a 3/4 to 1 horsepower motor. Pull up the little cover where you change your pulley settings on it, whether it's electric variable speed or just manually variable, and make sure it's got a belt wider than like a pencil in it. There's some it's got it's about the width of a pencil. They can't transfer the power if you get much more than a 1/3 horsepower up to the spindle without it slipping. So look for that wider belt. It's probably 1/2 to 3/4 inches wide. That way you can get the power from the motor to the spindle. I know at one point in time, Jet tried to make a 12-inch Midi lathe that had that real small belt in it, and you just couldn't get that power. And I think it was 3/4 to 1 horsepower, but you couldn't get that power from that motor to the head. So make sure the belt's a little wider. Also, if you're going to go with just a multi-step pulleys in it for changing your speed, you can get more torque out of it than you can the smaller ones with the same motor size, because those are DC drives and they lose torque on the lower speed setting on the variable speed. So if you're going to get a variable speed, try to go to 1 horsepower. Basically is what I'm saying. And you can take some fairly hefty cuts on most of the Midi lathes on the market now. The Jet 1221 VS is a very nice lathe. I own a couple of those. Actually, the Laguna is a nice lathe, and it actually has a little bit more torque into it than the Jet. And you can, if you put the outboard tool bed off of it, you can do up to like 14 inches on it on the backside so you can get a little bit more capacity out of it. But if you're going to do bowls for practical use, 10-12 inches is basically what you're wanting to turn anyway. So most Midi lathes, as long as it has the 12-inch capacity, will get what you're wanting.
Yep.
Also, remember, it says it has 12-inch capacity. When you're finished turning, it's going to be less than 12 inches, because that is the center of the spindle to the bed of the lathe. You're not going to have it perfectly around going in, so you're going to wind up taking some of it off. So you're going to wind up with a bowl a little less than 12 inches at best.
Just getting some pictures here, and we'll kind of go over a few that you said. Myself, I have turned on that Jet, the 1221.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that a lot. The other one I learned more on. So turning with you, Scott, as far as having someone there to tell me what I'm doing right and wrong. But the one that I really learned on was the 1015.
Right.
There's the ones
smaller
that
Jet.
the club had. Yeah, the smaller Jet. And
They're
yeah,
great.
there's a huge difference between that belt. That is one of the easiest ways to be able to sense that, is to get a smaller mini versus a Midi type lathe. And
now,
you can really tell.
If you're turning pins in small projects and that's all you're wanting to do, that 10-inch capacity with that smaller belt is more than sufficient. But if you're wanting to turn bowls and stuff like that, I would recommend go ahead and stepping up that next level, and you'll be much happier and less frustrated in the long run.
Yeah, and that's really the other thing too, is that you can start out with maybe a cheaper one that you find somewhere, or even a used one, but eventually you're going to find what doesn't work for you in those particular aspects. So all of these that I have downloaded here all have one very big thing in common, and that is the variable speed control. I have found that to be a lifesaver for someone starting out, because if you have your the lathe already set up, as far as you move the positions on the belt for the headstock, then you're kind of stuck with that speed. With the variable speed, you can dial it in to what feels right. And I like that as far as a beginner goes. But all of these are around $700 to $1,000, and but it has all the bells and whistles that you would need to get started. You're not going to feel it lacking in any of these models.
No,
And
all of those.
JP's a woodworker, so I think you fully understand the importance of if you're going to buy a tool, buy the right one. Most of us woodworkers, we get into it, we try to go cheap right out of the gate to save money, but once you've done it a little while, you realize paying a little more for the right tool, you get that value back over the life of the product for sure.
Yeah, all the ones that Mike showed, I've demoed on before or own, and they all do very well.
Yep.
But out of those, my favorite is probably that jet right there. Out of the three that you've shown, I mean, I like the Laguna, but there's one little caveat in it: the way the Morse tapers are in it. A lot of your standard Morse taper pieces, like if you put in the tailstock, when you crank it back, they won't knock out because the taper is so long in it, it doesn't hit the push-out pin in the back. It kind of makes it hard on some of those to knock out. Once you realize that's what's going on, you can take a knockout rod and knock them through the tailstock. But I know a lot of people in our club, they found that just completely annoying.
Because a lot of times, like how this live center is here in the tailstock, when you back it all the way out, it starts to push that piece out, is what you're saying.
Yes. On the Laguna, the taper is so deep in it. A lot of the standard stuff has a number 2 Morse taper, will not push out. And that's another thing. If you're looking at even other lathes other than these couple here, if you buy one at Klingspor, they're going to have number 2 Morse tapers in it. I know there's a few places that you can get cheaper tools. Be careful, because a lot of them have a number 1 Morse taper, and it does not hold your drive spurs and your live centers and that type of stuff very well. And also, it's harder to get the spare parts, to get other pieces for it. I know you can get an adapter for it, but then you're taking out your distance between centers, like if you wanted to do candlesticks or something like that.
Now, not only that, if they're using a number 1 Morse taper, that typically means they're using a 3/4 inch spindle, which if you start getting into bowls, you run the risk of having a little less stiffness on that to be able to keep that rigidity that you're looking for. So most of the lathes Mike showed, actually all the lathes Mike showed there are 1-inch 8 spindle thread, which is very, very common. And that makes it real easy to adapt to no matter what kind of chuck or faceplate or any other kind of accessory you're looking for. We've got all of those that fits right on all those standard fittings.
All right. Personal preference, just for the cost factor for all those lathes. If you're looking for a chuck, that Nova G3, it comes with a built-in spindle thread in it. You don't have to put an insert in it. And it also gives you just a little bit more room between centers because you don't have that shoulder for the insert sticking in. It gives you an extra 1/4 inch that you'd lose otherwise if you're needing that distance.
So let me bring that up, because that is a good point to talk about when it comes to chucks, is that you have an insert version and then you have a standard thread already cut into the chuck. I've always found that the insert version, if you plan on using the chuck like you would a drill or something where you're going to be changing it out between lathes, the insert version is kind of handy. Or if you're going to be having a large bowl lathe for something and then a small mini lathe for pins, that you, in the beginning anyways, that you can adapt that chuck to fit on both machines. Eventually, the goal is to have a chuck for each machine.
Or multiple, so you don't have to change your jaws in it.
Yes. Turning really, it reminds me of of power drills and routers. Like, you can never have too many chucks, just like you can't have too many routers or drills.
And in Scott's case, you can't have too many lathes.
No joke.
There you go. Have a lathe for each turn.
I would like, you got to take a picture of it, even if it's messy. It doesn't matter. You got to take a picture of it just to show it off, because I think it's funny just how many lathes there are. It looks like it's a old lathe warehouse. It's the best way I know how to describe it. So here's the new G3 ProTech, fully nickel coated, but it's still the same Nova G3 that we've all come to love. I have an old saying that I don't mind saying it here. Usually it's always in the store, which is not a big deal, but there's a Nova Precision Midi chuck. I won't sell it to you. I really do not like that chuck at all. I've thrown it across the room. So if you're in the market for a chuck, don't get that Midi. Nah, that's my personal preference.
Also, I believe that's the one that has the double bars that you have to. Yeah. So regardless if you buy a chuck somewhere else, we prefer you buy it from us, but don't buy one with the 2 bars that lock it. Trust me, that it's worth the money to step on up to the wrench with the gears It's so because you actually then can hold the bowl tight to the chuck while you're turning that tensioning key.
And
Well,
that's
not
why I
only
didn't like
that,
that one.
they call them Tommy bars a lot of times. If you hear somebody say a Tommy bar chuck, that's what they're talking about. And you can't tighten it down as good on with those, and they have a tendency to work loose when you're turning.
Mm-hmm.
So you constantly have to go back and do it. And also they're a lighter weight chuck, and you can't put a bigger piece in them as well. So that's one thing you just got to be careful for. Yeah, I will not use one with the Tommy bars because I never know what I'm going to throw in the lathe. And yeah, if you see me turn, you'd understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
there.
you don't.
I'd sling it
don't
across the
want that
room.
chuck. So that's the reason I threw it, is because I was turning with it, and the problem is that it got loose and the bowl flew off. And then when I found out that it was actually those bars that had worked loose, that thing was gone. I was done, because that becomes a safety issue for me if I can't rely on that chuck to hold it. So hey, JP says, I mean, Norm Abrams, he had over 20 routers. Why not lathes? That's exactly the point.
Yep.
But he did ask a question: what recommendation for turning tools?
All right. Personally, this is the way I look at it. If you're going to be the turner that's going to turn once every 6 months or whatever, and you're not wanting to spend the time to learn the traditional tool correctly, that's when you look at your carbide, like your easy wood tools and that type of thing, because you want to go down and make something that looks decent and come back with it, and not have to spend the time to learn like a traditional bowl gouge, the skews and spindle gouges and all that. And it said Easy Wood makes tools designed for that group of people. Once you pick up an easy tool and take it to wood, that's as good as you're ever going to be with it. You're not going to really progress with your how well you can get a fine cut and everything else. And then once you start going into traditional tools, I typically look at Crown first. If Crown has the option for the bowl gouge or spindle gouge or whatever it is, I'll buy it there because it's a little cheaper. They're a smaller company, so their tools are typically $5 to $10 cheaper than the Robert Sorby. And if Crown don't have it, then I'll go to Robert Sorby and look and see what they've got. If it's something I know I'm going to use a lot, like a bowl gouge, I'm going to go ahead and look for the Cryo. As I was saying earlier, Crown Tools has basically four versions of steel now. They have their standard high-speed steel, which is the same as what Robert Sorby has. Then they also have a powder metal, which is a different style metal that has a edge retention roughly 3 times the length of, or it holds it about 3 times as long as the standard high-speed steel. The caveat is that with the powder metal, the cutting edge is not quite as fine, so you can't get that clean finish cut with it. But for hogging out material, or if you got wood that came from near a railroad track that had sand blown into it, or a creek bed that's really dirty, it's great for hogging material out. Then you got your Cryo Tools, which their standard cryo is their powder metal that has been cryogenically altered. Basically, after the heat treat process within X number of days, I forget what they said it is, then they have to take it and get it cryogenically treated, which is where they try to get it down close to 0 degree Kelvin. And that's the point where all molecular movement kind of stops. They don't reach that, but they try to get it super cold. Then they bring the temperature back up slowly. And what it does is it brings that grain structure tight together again and gets you a finer cutting edge. So their standard high-speed steel will hold the edge 3 times as long as the standard high-speed steel, the same as the powder metal, but gets that real fine cutting edge. Their M42 steel, they say it's a little better than the Cryo. My experience is it may be just a hair less, but it's somewhere in that same ballpark. And the price point's roughly the same, best I can tell from what I remember seeing. I haven't checked prices lately, and Mike, you can check on that from the M42 to the Cryo, the standard Cryo, but there should be very close to the same. Either one of them are really good tools, and they all have the same sharpening characteristics. You can sharpen them with your standard belt sanders, Tormek, the standard stones, the Wolverine system, whatever. You don't need any special tools to sharpen with it. But yet you get that edge retention that's roughly 3 times as long as standard high-speed steel. That may be more than you cared for, but that's my general train of thought when I'm buying wood turning tools.
And so, like we mentioned before, if you ask a wood turner a question, you'll get a lot more than what you thought you were going to get originally. But no, that's all good information to have, because if you're starting out and you buy, like, there is a cheap set of tools, it's like 6 tools for $100. I always offer that to someone who doesn't know how to sharpen or has a bench grinder that's not a slow speed bench grinder, because I know they're going to wear them out. They're just going to sharpen them all the way back to nubs.
Also, that same set of tools, they will not hold the edge as long as a crown or sword be high-speed steel either. It's not the same quality high-speed steel.
So the other thing to look for whenever you're looking at tools is the fact that, are you making dust or are you making chips? Because what you'll notice is right off the bat, it'll cut really nice. It'll cut like butter. You'll feel the tool cutting really well. And then what you'll notice is the cheaper tools start to wear down and that edge starts to get, you start to lose that sharp edge, is that it seems like it's taking more pressure for you to get that cut. You should have more dust present rather than chips. When you get to the dust stage, you're actually abrading, you're sanding, you're no longer cutting.
Where you're ripping.
Yeah, you're ripping, if you will. And so therefore, you've got to sharpen it again. And what you'll find is that with the cheaper set of tools, you'll be doing a lot more sharpening back and forth, or you'll start to give yourself more elbow grease to get the cut, which then makes it more dangerous. So stepping up in the beginning for a quality tool with a quality steel makes all the difference in turning where it's more fun.
Also, the one other thing you can tell when your tool's getting done or getting dull is the feedback you feel in the tool. You'll feel more beating on it. Da, 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 da. You'll feel that shaking in your tool more than you do with the sharp tool. Once if you start feeling for that, then it's easier. Once you start feeling that, go touch it up real quick, and you don't have to spend as much time sharpening. And you also be much happier turning because you're actually you actually start getting a much better feeling. You also your hands won't get the vibration, and you get that numb feeling and all that type of thing.
Just looking at price differences here, it looks like it's $10 more to get the M42 crown. Excuse me. The M42 crown is $10 more to have the cryogenic than it is for just the standard bowl gouge.
Okay, how about the standard cryo?
I'm looking now for that,
because I'm thinking the standard cryo and the M42 cryo was about the same price.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. Let's see here.
The other thing is, if you're new to wood turning, you see this massive set of tools that's a big starter set. Yes, you can save some money if you start looking at each of the tools individually, but once you start turning, you're only going to use maybe 2 or 3 of them out of that set, depending on what you're going to be doing. So you may just want to buy pieces and parts. If you're mainly wanting to do bowls, get a bowl gouge and a parting tool, or a bedan. And that'll be a good starting point. If you're going to do pins and that type of thing, then a good spindle gouge. And I know people are going to cringe when I say this, but a skew is great for turning pins once you learn how to use it. But the learning curve is very great for learning to use a skew, because most people want to use it as a scraper and not as it's intended. And if you're using it and you're not used to using it, you can get some nasty catches. But once you learn to use a skew, you can make the most smooth, beautiful cut. It's almost like you come off with sandpaper with it when you take the tool off of it.
Yeah, it's more of a burnished cut than an actual traditional tool cut.
Yes.
I know one of the things that stands out to me is, when you're just getting into wood turning is, well, if you go and you buy traditional tools, then you have to buy something to sharpen them.
Either that or make something to sharpen it.
Well, you can make a lot of the jigs. You got to have a way, but you still have to have something to sharpen it. So if you don't already have a grinder, you've got to buy a grinder.
You can use the lathe, but you got to take your piece on and off to sharpen.
Whereas you can take your face tools with the carbide tips, those, if you're just looking to get started, those are good starter tools because of that. It doesn't require you to own any additional equipment or make anything else for sharpening, because those are just replaceable. So that is one advantage of getting started with those versus traditional tools, is the no need for additional machinery or accessories.
But the only caveat is those are scrapers, not cutters, and so you won't get this true finish on it. There are a few carbide tools that do have a cutting tool, But like your Easy Wood and that, they're truly a scraper, not a cutting tool, because the way the angle comes in contact with the wood. I know, I'm trying to remember who all sells, and I know the Hunter tools use a dished carbide cutter, but they're not used for, they're mainly for hollowing. They're not designed for shaping of bowls, outside of bowls and that type of thing, and also mass removal. So, but they do make a nice finish cut. So there are a few carbide tools that will make a finish cut that you can change your angle on a little bit and get better. Now, the Rikon carbide set, they do at least give you the option to kick it on a 45-degree angle left or right, or have it flat. And kicking that carbide tool at a 45-degree angle is kind of like taking your hand plane, going across a piece of wood when if you want to do a mass removal, you hold it straight, with it, and push it straight against it, like your piece, and you go through it. But if you kick it at an angle and do it, you get those nice corkscrews coming off of it. It'll help get you some of that, which is better than you get with like the Easy Wood, which is designed to be sitting flat against the tool rest and not kicked at an angle. So that'll give you a little bit more flexibility and just a little bit better cut.
And that's on the carbide tools, right?
That's with the carbide tools. Say the Rikon set, and also I think it's, Spindle Master or Turn Master from
Sorby.
Sorby. Yeah. It has that option too, to kick it at a 45 left and right off a flat.
Yeah, it was interesting because that's the way you taught me to approach the tool, was like a hand plane.
Yep.
And just, you'll feel that there's a certain sweet spot that has no vibration to it. It doesn't feel like it's, trying too hard. It's just all of a sudden, and you just get these chips flying off. And ever since then, that's how I've done everything. Now, what I do like about the Rikon set is that on the back side of the bar, it's got 3 flat spots. Mm-hmm. So therefore you can approach the bowl, for instance, and then tilt it at a perfect 45, and it holds it for you. Where Easy Wood and the Sorby do not have that.
The Sorby has a flat spot on the bottom, and you have to index the head. You have to screw it and roll it and stick it back in. So it takes extra steps that you got to do, and that's kind of a pain. But
I'm more of a fan of having those bevels right there ready to go and not have to index it.
But that is an option, though, if you have it, though.
Yeah, if you have the Turn Master, it is a great option. But if you're a beginner, for instance, and you're just starting out, then that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, Ken over in the show chat says he uses the Easy Wood for his roughing cuts, and then he saves his sharpening of his bowl gouges a little bit by doing that.
That's a good idea.
Once you learn to use a bowl gouge and have a lathe heavy enough to do it, you can actually rough out quicker with a traditional bowl gouge than you can with the Easy Wood, or at least I can. And so I still just stick to traditional tools, even roughing out.
And that's the beauty about wood turning, is once you can get comfortable with any number of methods and forms and whatever works for you, stick with it. And always trying to expand your knowledge and learn a little more. But as you try it and you don't like it as well, just keep using what makes it comfortable. Because if you don't feel comfortable doing it and feel confident in the process you're going through, then you're going to feel unsafe, and it's going to make you less likely to be performing those actions. So Scott has no problem jabbing those tools deep into the wood and just really creating those shavings, and there's times I've watched him and been completely frightened for his life, but he has no problem doing it. He feels confident in the tool and the machine and what he's doing. So that's the key. Feel good about it and feel safe about it, and keep learning.
Yeah, the what was it, 2018, I think it was, when General Finishes had that wood shaving competition to see how far the shavings could go. How big was the log you were doing, Kasky? Because that was 16 feet. That was hitting the roof of the convention center.
I'm thinking it was 10, 12 inch diameter.
Let me tell you, that thing, yeah. So we got to do a video of just your general turning style, so we can try to show people what we're saying. Because we learned.
Actually, you probably have video of the competition when we did that somewhere.
We don't. I looked. I don't have any of it. So if it's somewhere, it's someone else has it.
Okay.
because I wanted to get that for this. I was digging. Let's see here.
But yeah, we were hitting the roof of the convention center. We were also being able to control the shavings to get them to certain locations. And what was the height and distance and precision of moving the shavings? It wasn't designed to actually turn anything. It was just how much tool control you really have.
Yeah, because wasn't there a bucket or something you had to hit the shavings into?
We had some. We actually had, I think it was 4 or 5 of the cardboard boxes. You had to get shavings in each one of the boxes, and they were set in random places in front of you. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, though.
It was.
Let's see here. I'm trying to find. So we're going to go into next a video that Scott did on how to create an Ellsworth grind for your tool. So if you're starting out and you have a regular bowl gouge, I'm going to show you real quick, because that's what I'm digging around trying to do, is the difference between a regular bowl gouge and then an Ellsworth grind, and what the Ellsworth grind is, which has been made famous by Mr. David Ellsworth himself. Isn't he now a Nashville resident? He now lives in North Carolina?
Not sure.
No. Thought he moved this way.
If not, he should.
So, Scott, why don't you tell them about that while I find it, and then I'll bring it up.
All right. Basically, what we're going to do is take that traditional English style grind, which is the end of the bowl gouge actually has a U shape to it, and it has the corners on the very top, and the cutting edge is just basically you just take it to the grinder and roll it. What we're going to do is take those ears and lay them back, so you get rid of those hard corners up there, and you actually have this long cutting surface on the side. Go through the process of being able to sweep the ears back and profile the tool. I'm taking it you're going to do the freehand one first, is to show how to shape it. That's the one you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I've got the video. I'm just trying to find a picture to kind of give an idea of what we're talking about. So this here is your standard bowl gouge. And unfortunately, I don't have an up close picture, but you can tell down here how swept the sides are. That's an Ellsworth grind.
Yeah, you take those hard corners off the edge, which is what most people get catches on those points up there, and it causes nasty catches and scares the crap out of them, and also will rip the tenon off the bottom of your bowl if you've got it in a chuck, and send it flying across the room or anything like that. So it just makes it a lot safer if you can take that corner and pull it back towards the handle, those two tips, and it makes it a much more versatile tool. If you cut off the side, you can use it similar to a skew. You can hog out with it. You can do finish cuts with it. You can drop the handle down, and like we're talking about using a hand plane, if you drop the handle way down and have that going across there close to your edge of your bowl, and you put that over there, so you get these nice little curly cues coming off of it. Looks like a hand plane. You get the smoothest cut. You may have little ridges in it, but one quick pass with sandpaper take those itty bitty ridges out, and saves you a ton of sanding from tear out.
Absolutely. And speaking of sandpaper, 20% off on all discs, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, scalloped, Klingnet, you name it. We have 20% off at woodworkingshop.com.
So Mike's telling you not to do the tip and the handle on it, so you buy more sandpaper and help the store out more.
Hey, I would rather someone get back to actual wood turning than having to worry about you using more sandpaper on this case. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I'm a finishing guy. So therefore, we're going to get into a small debate here as far as your finishing process and how I think it's not needed. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, also one thing, let me tell you this, the caveat for I don't care which finishing or how you sand or whatever, start with the grit you need. If you need to start with a cinder block, start with a cinder block. Make sure it's coarse enough to get the tear out that you've got or whatever that you need to remove. Start with a coarse enough grit. Say, well, I'll start with a 320. Yeah, but you spend 2 hours on it. What's the point?
Cinder blocks available in the 36 grit, available from Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
There you go. Start with it. Spend 2 minutes with it. Then start progressing through instead of spending 2 hours with 320, because I want to say I start with 320.
Yeah, and also if you're that rough of a pass where you have to use a center block, it might also be a great time to sharpen the tool.
Or learn a new technique.
Yes.
Like wood carving.
So Mike, are these deals that we're talking about, are they also available in our 4 stores, Asheville, Hickory, Winston-Salem, and Cary?
That's a great question. And they will honor them if they are not.
There you go.
But if you're going to be stopping by one of the stores on your way to the beach, perhaps, and hey, it's always great to go into the woodworker's candy store or dream store, whichever you want to look at it, and, get these deals while you can. Absolutely. But real quick, what we have on sale is 20% off those select abrasives. We have 25% off of turning books. So any of the books that are on our website that deal with turning. So when you go to shop, by the way, you just click on books and then you go down to the turning section, and there you go. All those are 25% off. We also have 10% off bandsaw blades, 10% off Robert Sorby, 10% off Crown Tools, 10% off the Rikon turning tools and accessories. So as Scott and I were talking earlier, that Rikon turning set, that is also 10% off, which is a great deal. I have one. I absolutely tell everyone to get one if they're starting out, because it is one of the easiest things to use. 10% off Easy Wood Tools and inserts. 10% off ArborTech. 10% off Chromacraft finishes, which is a Nick Agar. He is a big fan of those finishes and makes some awesome things with them. And then 10% off CA glues. So if you're using CA glue to maybe solidify some of your rotted turnings, spalted turnings, then yeah, that'd be a good one too. So
Also,
Scott, yeah, what's up?
One other thing, since you're talking about all the discounts and stuff, I may want to mention about if you join one of the local clubs that y'all support, then you get 10% off everything except for wood and power tools pretty much every day.
Yep, that's right. So if you are part of a club, Klingspor's Woodworking Shop has a program that's called our club program that gives you 10% discount every day on things like abrasives, things like the turning tools themselves, everything except for wood, anything with a power cord or battery, and then of course discounted or closeout items. But so you can enjoy these discounts all year long. You don't have to wait for the AAW weekend. If you're a wood carver, wood turner, just general woodworker, all of those clubs we honor. So we just ask that there's actually a club site. I think it's woodworkingshop.com/clubs where you can find out more information about that. So we ready?
Awesome.
We ready
Yeah,
to
sure.
critique the Caskey video?
Sure. Go ahead and razz me.
Let's see. This should be this one.
I'm here at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop in Hickory, and I'm going to do a little demo on how to take a English style bowl gouge and make it into a fingernail Ellsworth style grind on it. First I'm going to do one freehand on the bench grinder, and then we're going to go through one video with the Wolverine system, showing you how to use the Wolverine jig. And then we'll also show how to use the Tormek and set it up so you can use whichever system you have to get the most optimal use out of your equipment. Start off with, I'm going to just kind of go over what a English grind is. This is the standard English grind. It is just basically the standard flute with a bevel on the top. This is typically how the English use their bowl gouges. In America, we tend to not like this very much because it does have a tendency to grab if you're roughing out and everything with it. But it does have one major advantage in this factor, or even with the ears just slightly pulled back, and that is in the bottom of a bowl. When you get deep into a bottom of a bowl with this bevel like this, and like it, you can get and clean up the bottom of a bowl a little bit better in this situation. But this is the general profile in which we like in America. It's mostly common, the Ellsworth grind, and it is very easily achieved and maintained once you kind of get the idea of how to do it. All right, this is the standard English grind on flute, which is how the English typically make their bowl gouges. If you notice, it has a pretty much straight up and down ears on it. And in America, we tend to prefer an English or an Ellsworth style grind, which looks like this. You can see the difference where the ears are pulled back. It's much less for getting catches. It's more forgiving. It's also a more versatile tool. So what we will typically do is we'll remove the big shoulders up here and go back, sweep them back. There is an advantage to having an English bowl gouge in your toolkit. Is in the bottom of a bowl. If you've got a deep bowl, it's easier to get in the bottom and clean up the bottom, but you want to keep these ears away from the wood because it will make a nasty catch if you're not ready for it. The process in which we'll go from getting from this to this will consist of, first we will take and grind those ears back. We'll just take it straight up against the grinding wheel like this and go down until we get it to the very tip, and then have it swept back as far as we want for our ears for our English grind. After we do that, we will take and set our grinder up the right angle, which is this angle here is typically what I tend to use, which is around between 40 and 45 degrees. There's a lot of debate on which is the correct angle, somewhere in between there, but just pick something. Once you get used to it, you'll be happy with it. But once you get that plate set where you can set this down on and it makes contact with your wheel, like something like that, then we're ready to remove the excess off of here to get that English grind. What we're going to do now is, you see this one still has that hard flat surface on it, and this one's already been ground back. What we're going to do is take it and set it flat against the tool rest, and we're going to roll it into the wheel, like up here where my thumb's the wheel. We're going to keep it flat against the tool rest completely, and we're going to roll it over and in until we remove that stock. All this stock over here, what we're going to do is going to leave this fine little edge on the edge of this here and remove all this on this side over here. And this is what we're going to be left with. Have a container of water so you can keep your tool cool, so you don't take the temper out of the tool while you're cutting, because you're going to see me constantly quench to keep the tool cool. By the way, this is a slow speed grinder. It's 1800 RPM. Try not to use the high speed grinder because it gets too hot too quick, removes stock way too fast. So pretty much all wood turners, if you're using a grinder, recommend finding a lower speed grinder. To start off with, I'm just going to hold the tools up high on the tool rest. I'm going to come in, let both ears make contact, and I'm just going to work it down. And I'm telling you the truth, I'm not even positive which stone I'm on, if I'm on the coarse or the fine. It really doesn't matter for what I'm doing. I'm just grinding it back, and take a look and see I'm not all the way back, not all the way back to the point yet. So I still got some more to remove, but you see how the color is just changing on this tool, which is telling me I'm getting it hot. Anytime you get a tool hot, you do change the temper. So no longer than I've been on the grinder right now, I am changing the temper somewhat on the tool. So that's the reason why you want to constantly quench. And you see I'm getting closer. I'm starting to see sparks come across the front, which is telling me I'm getting really close. You can see I've got just a little dab left on the very top edge that's not shiny, which tells me I'm not at that front edge yet. I think I just saw some sparks, just did. Let's quench that. And you can start to see just a very faint shine across the top of it. Bench grinder. First I'm going to take a Sharpie and put black on the back side of this so I can check my angle. The other thing you'd want to do is go ahead and power the machine completely off and preferably unplug it. I'm going to leave it plugged in just for the sake of the video for speed, but I'm going to hold this down on this bench and I'm going to kick this angle up and move it until I get it pretty close, and I'm going to spin backwards and see how I'm hitting on the bottom side, so I need to tip it down a little bit, which also I'm going to need to come in some too, so let's do that. And if you notice, this is not exactly the steadiest piece right here, which is fine. It's all good. It'll be close enough for what we're doing. And you see I'm starting to get a line go all the way across to the tip top. It's close enough for us to do what we're needing. Now, the key here is to keep this tight against this tool rest at all times. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and just work this one side down. And we're going to quench quite frequent in there so we can keep the temper in that tool from removing all the temper in it. You can see that little line gets smaller and smaller. And you can see it's getting closer, that this whole shoulder is disappearing, and we've still got this shoulder over here just like in that wooden demo model. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep on rolling it. And once we get it to that edge, you'll notice that there will be sparks coming across the top edge. You start seeing them now. It means we're really close to having it where we need to be. You can barely see a shiny line up there, which means there's just a little bit left to catch. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but there's a real shiny line right where my thumbnail is. That means we're just got a little flat spot up there. So we're almost there on that. All right, now we have our basic grind. And we can go back and touch up once we get it closer, but get the other side. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to move this out of the way. Now we've got our rough fingernail grind. You can see the grind marks in here are not real even and smooth, which is one major advantage to having a jig do it. But now that we've got this, you also notice I've got a pretty heavy point on the front. So now I'm going to go back and clean up and kind of sweep it all the way around to round my point back out like we would normally have in our normal grind. So we're going to just kind of swing. It's easier to do one side than the other, than come back up and clean up that point. The key to this is keep your nose or the tool tight to the tool rest. Now you can see that sharp point is now gone off the front of it, which is what you're wanting. I'm going to make a few final good cleaning passes and see if I can clean up some of those grind marks. That's how you take a standard English grind to a bowl gouge, an English or a more of an Ellsworth grind, freehand. And if you can see, we got all sorts of little waves and stuff in the surface, and we do have a little discoloration, but that was because we were heating it up pretty good. So that means those are tempers slightly off where you see the major color changes, but it should not be enough to make a big difference in the tool. Next, we'll show using a Wolverine jig how to do the same type of profile, and then we'll also go over with a Tormek. So look out for those videos as well.
Very good job, Scott.
All right, just so everybody knows, I did not come up with that. If you ever see Mike Mahoney sharpen, that's the way he sharpens a bowl gouge. I saw him do it, and all of a sudden the light bulb clicked. It's really simple if you see it, in that form factor. He didn't show actually sweeping it back, but it was rather obvious once I watched it. That's how you would keep that profile. So I want to give the credit where credit's due. That was something that I've seen Mike Mahoney do. I don't know where he got it, but anyhow, that was his basic process of sharpening a bowl gouge.
And if you don't know, Mike Mahoney also makes a wonderful walnut oil.
Yes.
What's it called?
It's called Mahoney's walnut oil.
The other thing about if you ever see Mike Mahoney and talk to him afterwards, he uses it by the 55-gallon drum. He never puts the lid on it. He lets it air constantly, so it'll start thickening up. And he says once it starts thickening up, it actually applies better than it does straight out of out of the bottle. So if you get a jug of it or whatever, leave the lid off of it and just use it that way. So that's the way he actually uses it.
And they also have a Mahoney's oil wax finish as well if you want a beeswax infused walnut oil.
And Mahoney's oil is not just for wood turning. If you are a traditional woodworker, I actually made a piece where I wanted to really just change that color and a really dull but sort of a hand oil rubbed look. And I put that on as my final finish for my actual sign that I made. Works really well, and it brings out the color and grain of wood. I mean, it just really makes it pop.
Yep.
Super great for cutting boards too.
Yep, that's probably one of my favorite utilitarian finishes. The only downside is that it does take a while to dry, but
well, you got to realize typical walnut oil will never dry. You have to have a dryer in it for walnut oil to dry, and his is set up to do that, and his is food safe. If you use standard walnut oil, it'll turn rancid on you before it even attempts to get dry.
Now, what is the difference between food grade as far as something you would put on your salad and this walnut oil?
This actually has a dryer in it, so it will dry out. Where like if you're using grapeseed oil or something like that, you can go to Ingles or whatever grocery store and buy grapeseed oil and put it on and wipe it, and you give it enough time, it'll actually dry to a hard finish. Where if you buy walnut oil at the grocery store, you put on, it'll be wet from now on. It'll never dry out, and it'll actually turn you that rancid, putrid, like you bag of chips that got stuck in the corner that you forgot about, and you open it and it was like, oh God, throw those things out. It'll have that smell to it.
Just want to make sure this is not brought to you by Mike Mahoney or Mahoney's Walnut Oil. We're just talking about it because it's something that we actually enjoy to use. All three of us have used it at some point.
Yes. And say another option is the Walrus Oil. If you want it to stay more bright instead of dark in any, the Walrus Oil does well for that.
Yeah, the standard Walrus Oil is good, but they have one that I really like. It's called the Wood Wax for finishing, for wood turning. Let me bring that one up. This one's probably my new favorite wood turning finish. That's fast, easy to apply. I actually have a container of it, but I also have a bowl that's made of it. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and load this up. But yeah, when I got this to try out, I told the guy who owns the company, I was like, this stuff's fantastic for wood turning. I mean, it's fast and easy, more so than any other beeswax infused finish that I've had.
Now, if you're wanting it to, if you got something with a lot of grain and wave to it, like curly maple or something like that, the standard oil, a couple coats of it will penetrate in and make it, get that glow pearlescence look, and then put that on top of it, so you can get a deeper penetration.
Yes, I agree with that. Let's see. Let me find that one.
And JP posted a comment: balsamic vinaigrette is not the same as walnut oil. Definitely not. You're talking vinegar base with oil in it, and then no, definitely different.
Yeah, sounds like something. Yeah, those are two different salad dressings. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Let me remove that one. Let me put the standard Walrus Oil that put them on the map. The cutting board oil. And Klingspor's Woodworking Shop was the first all-in retail stores as well as online supplier of Walrus Oil. Now you can find it pretty much anywhere, but we've stood behind the company since the beginning.
But it does. If you got a lot of figure in it, it'll make the figure pop.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then put the other on top of it, and it'll help seal it in.
And it's not just regular mineral oil mixed in with, a bunch of other stuff. There's actually a lot that went into that process. If I'm not mistaken, that was like WD-40. The story behind it was that it was the 40th formula they came up with. They said, yep, that's the one. This Walrus Oil is basically the similar story to where there was several that they were doing for cutting boards, and then boom, they hit this one, and that was the ticket.
Now, if you want to do the same thing with the Mahoney's, if you want that warmer, deeper look to it, if you use the Mahoney's straight oil, then put their waxed version on top of it, you can do the same thing with the Mahoney's, but to get that warmer look.
Now, it will amber it slightly. It's not going to add as much as what you see here in the bottle.
Right.
I have had a lot of people ask, does it really turn it that orange? No, it's just because there's so much in the bottle, the light going through it makes it more orange. You're not putting that much on your surface. So,
but if you're using straight white maple, it'll warm the tone a little bit. Where Walrus Oil is pretty much is about the color you're seeing to begin with.
Yeah, it's almost like a milky looking oil because of the wax in it, but it doesn't change the color as far as, adding an amber element to it. Like all oils will eventually kind of do that, but at the same time, right up front, it looks worse in the bottle than what it will actually do to your piece. And there's always that one. Now, what I do like about these with wax, out of all the other wood turning finishes that are out there, this actually has carnauba in it. And the difference is that carnauba is going to be a harder type of wax, something that you would find like on automotive applications on your car. What that means also, though, is that it takes a little bit more heat to generate, to build, to get it to flow out. So if you're using the Mahonis, what I found is that having the lathe at a much higher rate of speed and then pressing in harder with a cloth to really start to get that heat to generate will let that flow a lot better than other beeswax finishes on the market.
And personally,
burnish it in.
Well, and personally, if I'm putting even the straight oil on it, I want it to heat up so it'll penetrate deeper in it as well, especially if it's a curly piece or whatever, so it'll get down and make that curl really pop.
If you didn't sand it to 400, you wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, and if the light hits it right, you see the marks in it.
Yes.
And this is where it all comes down to technique, folks. It's not just what tool you use. It's what you do after you're done with the tooling.
Yep, absolutely.
And what your outcome is, if it's going to be a utilitarian piece, no, there's no need to go to 400. But if you want more of a show piece that's not going to be, a fork, knife, whatever, scraping against it, yeah, there's, if you're doing that, then you don't need to go to that extent. But if you want something that's going to sit on the shelf and have a pretty color or, clear finish and all, you may want to go to those higher grits.
And just like everything else, there's an easy way and then there's the right way.
They're both the right way. But in this case here, if you're going to have a showpiece or something that's going to be a display piece that's non-utilitarian, so you're not going to handle it, you're not going to use it for anything other than sitting on a shelf and looking pretty, then oils may not be the best solution, because oils will need maintenance because they're penetrating in, especially anything with mineral oil in it. If you're going to be sanding up to 400 and you're going to be doing a showpiece, then that's when things like lacquer or a urethane based type finish, like what is it, the salad bowl finishes, even though they say that they're for a salad bowl, it's that look on the outside that you want, that super shiny look. That's when you can go that route. I would say no problem then with 400 and going that route, because you're putting a film over it. But if you want something that's utilitarian, what grit would you stop at then for you, Scott?
280, 320.
Okay.
But now, to tell you the truth, you can do a high finish with oil, but you can't use the the walnut oil or whatever, because the drying. But the grapeseed oil will actually do, if you build up layers of grapeseed oil, it'll look like lacquer when you're done. It just takes several weeks to dry between coats, but it'll do a super hard finish.
See, I've never tried that. I wouldn't mind doing that.
If you've got a drying cabinet, an old refrigerator with some light bulbs in it or whatever, you can speed that process up. But yeah, you'll get a super hard finish with it. But it just takes a lot of time. It's a lot of effort.
So if you're someone who has that time, you're not doing production, then that's feasible.
That's an option, yes. Okay. But said Mahoney, he developed his because he's a production wood turner, and his stuff is utilitarian. So that's he made his product for him to use, and then he found out that other people wanted it, so he started selling it.
And that's how that works. That's how Walrus Oil did it. And they needed their own cutting board oil. Then they found out it was pretty good and people wanted it, so then they started selling it. They stopped making cutting boards. Go figure. Let's see, we've gotten that covered. Okay, so on the next video you have, and we'll do that one real quick, is that we're going to be turning on the Tormek. So now you're going to be sharpening that Ellsworth that you had ground just a second ago?
I'm not sure if it's that one or a similar one, but it'll be basically coming close to the same thing. We just came off the grinder and then refining the edge. Okay. Or we're touching up one that's already been turned. No,
I'm pretty sure. So what we did here,
I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, we've slept since then. But if I'm not mistaken, we formed the grind on the bench grinder, and then you went to sharpen it and showing how you do it on the Tormek, because I think you're using the diamond on this one.
Yeah, I was using a diamond wheel. I'm sure.
It's been a while since we filmed this.
Yeah, and I said I do use a Tormek slightly different than how they tell you, because basically once I get my tool post set, I don't move it. Once I get it set where I'm going, I don't move it, so I don't have to go through the basic setup procedure every time. That's where people think the Tormek is so slow and hard to use, is because the initial setup. But if you're predominantly using it for wood turning, most what you're going to be sharpening is your bowl gouge, or you're going to be sharpening a skew or something of that nature, which personally I can freehand sharpen those without the jigs as bad as good as you can with the jigs. So, because it's a very simple profile. So, but once you get that bar set, and if you don't move it, you don't have to go through that initial setup portion of getting the bar set for your angle coming in every time. So it's very quick.
And how many Tormeks do you have?
3 or 4.
Actually, he has one that has a groove in the stone itself just for bowl gouges. Makes it a lot quicker. It really does.
The profile, I mean, you're using a curved tool. Why do you have to have a flat stone on it? It's doing the profile of what you're using anyway, so why not?
Just want people to know that you use it. Like you really.
Peter Brown asked 3 or 4 ? Slam. Yeah, if you go to a lot of the woodworking shops or wood turning clubs, and you see people buy these $600 and $700 Tormeks with all the attachments, and then they don't realize how to set them up and use them efficiently. So yeah, they'll sell them dirt cheap, and I'll buy them. I've got one set up with a Japanese water stone, which is, I'm wanting to say, what was it? A couple thousand grit, just for sharpening kitchen knives and quilting shears. My mom used to do a lot of quilting. Yeah, most of mine are green, by the way. I've got one blue one. Yeah, they're old. But anyhow, I've got one set up with that. I've got one mounted to a bench that I use in the shop all the time. And that's the one that's got the groove in it right now. And I've got 2 that I'll carry around if I'm going to a club to do demos at the club or the extravaganza or wherever. It depends on which one I'll grab to use. So I do have several, and I've got several set up for just to do that, or you do this couple things with, and then a couple to carry.
But it does make all the difference to have a Tormek sitting right there to sharpen it real quick on the fly and then keep going.
Yes.
Because whenever we're doing symposiums in person, Scott's turning probably 6 hours out of the day easily. I mean, you're just constantly over there turning something.
Yep.
So let's take a look at the, go ahead and remove that one. There we go. So I don't get confused.
Over talking about the Tormek sharpening system for bowl gouges and a little bit about the Tormek in general. In a previous video, we have gone over hand sharpening a gouge to get it into shape, which is the preferred method if you're using a Tormek, because if not, you'll spend a lot of time on it. Not to say you can't do it with it, it's just there's much more efficient ways to shape a bowl gouge. Start off with, I've got an older Tormek here. It's the older T7, the blue one. I've got some of the green ones at home. They're all good machines. This one here happens to have a diamond wheel on it. They just came out these, I guess, a year or so ago. There's a major advantage to having the diamond wheels. This is the coarse one, which is good for most of our wood turning tools. But if you want to do other finer things like planer blades and everything else, you may want to go to the fine diamond wheel. The standard wheels will work as well for any of these, for any of your turning needs as well. But this here has one advantage. So once you set your bar, if you're mainly doing bowl gouges, you never have to move it once you got it set, because you'll never wear your wheel down. It's always consistent. Always go back and just a light touch up and you're done. It's very quick. They've come out with a new jig for doing bowl gouges. This is the older version, which has been around forever. You can see it's got the brass piece in it, and it also has a nylon piece that can go up for larger gouges, but some of your smaller ones you got to take it off, so I don't have it on this one. This one you don't have to worry about that because it's slotted through and it'll go all the way down to the bottom. So they made a major improvement on their bowl gouge jig. So if you've got the Tormek system from a while back, you may still want to look into this. I find it to be much more convenient than the older version, which I've used for years. I do like this new jig. Similar to the doing it by hand or even using the Wolverine system, you've got to set your angle of approach for the stone and the angle that you want on the front edge of your bowl gouge. This is the angle I'm talking about right here. It's right on the front edge. It's where it comes in contact right here. And that has to do with this angle that you set on here. Most time it's close to a negative 45 degrees. And once you set it, it's like the Ron Pill coach, set it and forget it. Just set your angle and go with it. Just like with the other bowl gouge jigs, you basically slide your gouge in it. And the other key is have a depth stop. This is set for 2 inches. So set it down, push it up against it, and lock her in place. And this way you're repeatable every time you go back to it. And good thing if you're at home or whatever, mount your block with it mounted to it. That way it stays with the machine and you're always there. The next thing you want to do is take a Sharpie. This one's kind of dirty already because it's been used. I'm going to blacken the bottom of it. And since I'm using a different block, even though this is one I use on my bench at home, it's probably going to be awful hair. You want to spin it backwards and take a look at it. Actually, that block is almost identical at home, so you see a nice shiny mark. If it wasn't, you can slide this in and out to get that mark to go even with it. So now that you've done that, we turn the machine on. It's a simple, quick, couple passes back and forth. And it is slightly off, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. You see how shiny bright it is at the top? That's where it's made contact. So technically, I'm good to go right now because it's shiny at the top, not at the bottom. So I could actually stop right there and go with it, but if I want it shiny all the way through, put it, and it's doing it quickly, even because I've got the coarse stone on it right now. And it said for wood turning tools, the coarse stone is fine. Or the other thing about the diamond wheels on this, if you'll see people putting aftermarket CBN wheels on here, but you notice I'm running water. There's one major advantage to running water. It helps keep the diamond clean. It also keeps that dust down. It keeps it trapped in the bottom so you don't get that dust in there to breathe. But the other kicker with it is they recommend you use to put a little dab of this oil soap solution inside the in the water to help keep the stone clean. So once you've sharpened and got your edge cleaned up all the way down, if you want it a little finer, then you can actually come over to the leather strop on the other side, take your honing paste and put a little bit of honing paste on it. Your honing paste, put it on your finger, rub it on it, and take it and roll it in until it sits flat and just kind of roll it. I'm not going to do both sides. I'm going to see you can see the difference in honing and non-honing. All right. Now, if you look how polished this side looks compared to that, you got your lines in it that aren't polished at all, and then this side you can see the polished lines. So this side is definitely much more refined, much finer edge. If you're making a fine cut, finish cut on certain woods, you may want to do this. It's rare that you need to, but on some woods you can do that and get that little bit better cut that makes sanding a little bit easier.
Cool. Nice job, Scott.
Thank you.
Mike, you're muted.
I'll get used to that one day. Host privileges. I get to be muted and forget. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you doing those videos for us. I don't have the Wolverine one. I was looking for it. I don't know if we ever filmed it or you were going to come back. I don't remember.
Well, you filmed it, but I don't know if you've ever put it together.
Maybe we were too busy pushing each other on a chair through the aisles.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either.
You mean pushing Chris through the chair through the aisles on the stool?
Yeah.
I know not what you speak of.
Is that because you hit your head that time when you fell off?
Oh, that's right. Anyhow.
No, he don't have Dame Bramage, people. He don't have Dame Bramage.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
And welcome back to the AAW Symposium. This is the Klingspor's Woodworking Shop booth. We have a guest speaker, guest presenter here, Scott, with us, and my cohort, Mike Z.
Yep.
See how we turn that back around?
That was a nice way of doing that. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us at the top of the hour. We might as well file in with all the FCC regulations when going live for more than 2 hours. We are Klingspor's Woodworking Shop. I'm Mike Z. This is Chris, and this is Scott. And we are presenting for the AAW Wood Turning Symposium this weekend. We are having a sale off on, 25% off on books of wood turning selection, 20% off select abrasives, 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch discs. 10% off bandsaw blades, 10% off of Sorby, Crown, ArborTech, Chromacraft finishes, CA glues, and so much more.
And welcome.
And welcome.
If you've got any questions, feel free to post. We are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. We also are in our designated booth here at the AAW Symposium. So jot your question down. You might get a written response, or we may just pop it on the screen and answer it here live.
Morning, Jerry. Thanks for joining us. Yep, absolutely. Always a pleasure to have anyone join in or ask questions if you are looking to get into wood turning or are already a wood turner. We definitely welcome all views upon this particular wood craft of wood turning. And we have Scott Caskey with us to help back us up. Yeah, I need to get, I have chainsaw videos. I could show that of you cutting chainsaw blanks.
That's fine if you want to.
That's
no, I think what we're going to do for the extravaganza is really get into a video with you cutting that blank, how to turn the bowl on it, like go through the whole 9 yards of how you approach it and really just set it up. Because as I talk to you more about it, I realize that we really don't have what Chris and I have seen you do in person. We don't really have that much video on it. So we really got to get some stuff.
Yeah.
That's
we should
fine.
just follow him around for a week and just make that a fun adventure.
That would be entertaining.
And we could just speed the video up and make it look really funny.
Like it wouldn't look funny already.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but thanks for acknowledging that.
Glad you said it. Sure beats me having to say it. Yeah.
I figured I better catch it before y'all did.
So have you ever used the Glowforge light system?
No, I have not.
Okay. So we have a quick video here from Glowforge. Glowforge has a USB rechargeable light system for your lathe that is magnetic. And if I'm not mistaken, it's in a magnetic switch too. So it's not always magnetic. You can actually turn it off and not have it, stick to everything.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at that real quick.
Why we believe this is the most convenient die carver at Glowforge, and I'm here to introduce you to the new iLight range and why we believe this is the most convenient and versatile work light out there. When I designed the iLight, I mainly had in mind the day-to-day issues that electricians, plumbers, mechanics have trying to get their light exactly where they need it. The iLight is a 1000 lumen battery rechargeable floodlight. It runs for 3.5 hours on full power and 7 hours on half power. It's USB charged. You just plug it in, takes 3 hours to charge from a USB. It's got a little dial on the back there. It says how much power it's got left in it. We're on a 4-stage indicator. The magnets on the back, so you can actually stick it directly onto things. It also can charge your phone with a 4.4 amp hour battery and a power bank built in. What makes the iLight really unique is the accessories we've made for it to enable users to be able to get their light exactly where they need it. We have the iLight Plus. The light just screws on to this magnetic gooseneck here. It's on a very, very strong rubberized magnet and it comes with its own little stand. This you can just use as a normal standalone work light. You can angle it up and down where you need it. What makes it very unique is you can take it off and you can hang it around things or wrap it around things to elevate it. A very popular feature is just to chuck it over your shoulder, so you're completely hands-free everywhere you go. You can stick it onto the side of machinery or your consumer unit, boiler, car ramp, whatever you're working on. The gooseneck will position and hold that light just where you want it. 20 kilogram pull on that magnet, it's not going anywhere. Very, very popular also as a van light because it sticks to the ceiling of your van. The iLight Pro. It's exactly the same light head, so these light heads can screw on from the back or from the side there. With the Halite Pro, a much longer gooseneck and a much stronger gooseneck, and an even stronger magnet, 40 kilogram pull on the magnet there. But this will get that light into those really awkward spots. Very, very popular with people working on lathes and machinery. It comes with its own stand as well, and it's a standalone light. And if that's not long enough for you and you need even further reach out of your gooseneck, an extension gooseneck, it's all interchangeable, it screws on, and this enables you to get an extra 22.5 centimeters reach. So you really can get that light into areas where you'd never usually be able to get it. The Halite has been used for hundreds of applications that we never even thought of. Please check out the Glowforce website for further details and accessories.
Or you can check out woodworkingshop.com, where we have the Glowforce Halite Pro 1000 lumens on sale for $99.95, and the extensions available as well.
And that's a good little tool. I like it. There's a lot of accessories to go along with that little the extension arm, and not only once you flex it into place, it actually stays. I've seen a lot of others that don't. So
they kind of eventually start to fall over.
Yep.
Do you like that reenactment there? That was just for you. Oh, what is 20 kilograms in freedom units? Peter Brown, that's a great question. Google it. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like 40. What is that technically? Is that like 77 pounds? Oh.
Well, I know at work, I'm an electrical engineer. We use banner products basically configured like that, but you still have to plug them in. And that style of light is very useful, but it costs a whole lot more than $100. So anyway,
so $100 is a good deal.
It is a good deal.
Math. So overrated. Yep, absolutely. Oh, what else we got? We got all kinds of stuff. Sorry. Get sidetracked. So we talked about lathes. We talked about finish.
We've talked a little bit about chucks. You want to go in chucks for a little more detail?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Let me go find some one-ways, because that's my brand of choice.
Well, I was going to tell you the difference between the one-way and the Nova.
Go for it.
Okay, first of all, the scroll on the Nova and a one-way are backwards. So if you get one, stick with that brand. It'll save you a lot of headache in the future, because one you turn clockwise, the other you turn counterclockwise to tighten. I've got both, and yeah, it'll throw you for a loop if you switch back and forth during the day. But the one plus about a Nova chuck is from the G3 all the way up to what is their Titan, their largest one. All the jaws are interchangeable from the smallest to the largest. The one way, you have to buy jaw specific for that model of chuck. That is one downfall to the one-way system. One-way chucks are great chucks, except you do have to have like if you buy a stronghold, you have to buy all the jaws for a stronghold. They won't fit on the Talon or the regular stronghold chuck, which is the one with the Tommy bars we talked about earlier that don't want, because they'll work themselves loose. But you do have to buy the specific chucks for the specific, or jaws for the specific chuck in which you're wanting to use on a one-way.
So if you're going to have a mini or a midi lathe, something that's small, around 12 inches or less, then the Talon would be a good choice in the one-way department. If you're going to be doing something larger than that, like up to 16, 20 inches, then the Stronghold would be what you want, because the accessories that come with it are going to be are going to take a larger capacity. So there's no need to get a Stronghold if you're going to do a 12-inch mini lathe. Same thing if you're going to do a large, you don't want to use the Talon. So they do have their place.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us, JP. We appreciate it. Get finished up cleaning up that shop so you can get to making more videos. And Jerry says he couldn't use that light. I am so used to someone holding the light so they can see.
That's us at work a lot of times in electrical panels.
Yep. I remember growing up being that kid. And then I was always looking away, like trying to look at something else, and then the light would kind of fade down. And my dad would be like, "Hey, put that light back up there." Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So it's nice to have magnetic lights. Okay. With Nova, versus one way. The reason I like a one way better for myself is just the overall feel of it. I don't know how else to describe it. The downside is that you have to have your own adapter. Every one way has its own adapter.
Yes.
But it has 2 set screws in there. Yeah,
and it's got 2 jack screws to pull it out.
Yep. And so therefore, if you're doing forward and reverse, that's a nice feature to have versus just the 1 set screw, which I think most Novas have.
Right.
So it all depends on the system that you want. If you're going to be keeping it to pins, if you're going to be keeping it to smaller lathes and stuff like that, I think the Nova is a really good system to start with and keep rolling. But if you're going to be switching back and forth from a large lathe to a small lathe, then one way might be a good place to go to.
Yeah.
Well, I said the feel of a one-way chuck is, in my opinion, is a lot smoother. The scroll function in it and that type of thing. Even if you take them and put them in a grease or a cleaning tank and clean them pristine, and they're both identical, on that form factor, the scrolling all does feel a little smoother in a one way. But the Nova, I've never had a problem with them with the feel or whatever. They're both good. I've got both, and I use both. It's just the one major advantage of the Nova is you can carry their jaws from their smallest to their largest and carry them all the way through. That is one major advantage.
Absolutely. And the Supernova 2 is probably, I think, is a good all-around chuck. And it has what would you call it? A hex key tightening?
Yeah, it's got a hex drive.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you ever accidentally lose your chuck key, it's not a big deal. That was the one thing I did like about it. But,
Mike, I just sent you a couple photos of the Chromacraft spray.
You sent that to Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Great. Now I got to download these.
All right. Another thing about chucks, it doesn't matter which one it is. Once you get it full of gunk, make sure you clean it out. Take an air compressor, blow them out. If you, Morris Schlesinger, he actually does demos on how to tear them apart and clean them. If you have access to one of the cleaning tanks like you use to clean automotive parts and stuff in, if you put it in it and then roll the chuck key back and forth a few times, it'll clean it all out too, and you don't have to tear it apart, and you can take an air compressor, blow them out. But if you don't have access to that, you can put it in a jug with orange delimate degreaser in it and shake them around and let them set and work them, which would be the same thing as putting them in a parts cleaner without having to tear them apart. But I've got a couple that I use at work for actually doing testing on other things, and they don't get used a lot. So the oil sets up in it and it gets real good and gooey, and where you almost can't turn the scroll chuck, throw them in that orange delimate degreaser, just let them set for 20, 30 minutes, and you can run the scroll chuck and it'll free up as good as new. And so then just blow it out to get the extra gunk out of it, and you're good to go. But just general maintenance, just keep them clean. And don't put oil in them because it'll cause dust and stuff to stick in it, and that'll make them gum up quicker.
It's good to know. The Supernova 2, this is the new ProTech version, and we had talked about that. I had the hex drive. That's the hex drive right there, instead of like the one way has the drill chuck type key. So the Supernova 2 is $180 on sale. Comes with jaws, set pins, everything you need. And then Chris had sent me the picture. So what we were talking about earlier in the show was the special effects paint, the web effects by Chromacraft. And this is what Chris did with his cabinet, was that he sprayed his drawer fronts with it. So he painted it silver, then he sprayed it with the red web. And then this is the final product to where he had set it up this way. So it looks really nice when you're in the shop. It's attached to the CNC. It's the drawers for everything on his CNC. But to take that web effects and put it to a different, application than wood turning is pretty cool.
Nice finish.
Turned out pretty good.
Yeah, Jerry made a good comment there. Some parts washers, they put different chemicals in that will cause it to rust pretty quick when you take it out. That's the reason why we use the orange delimate which is basically the citrus in the citrus peel, the oil in it that they use. It's a good degreaser. It's actually safe if you get it in if you actually get some in you. It's not like some of the harsh chemicals you see otherwise. It's also good to kill ants if you need a side product for it.
Good to know. Peter Brown said, I agree, and he loves the Nova Chucks. He just bought a 30-year anniversary from some sandpaper company in North Carolina. I'm guessing that's what NC means.
Which one?
Oh, is there more than one?
I don't know.
Appreciate that, Peter. We appreciate your business and your support of Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, that particular sandpaper company in North Carolina, with 4 retail stores in Asheville, Hickory, Winston-Salem, and Cary, right outside of Raleigh.
Yeah.
Do I hear a cat?
Yeah, you hear my pet monster in the background.
What was that? Or some bird pretending to be a cat?
Let me go get the monster in so he can make an appearance.
It's always wonderful whenever you have a live studio audience.
Hey, Bubby. Yeah, monster.
Come on in. You going to talk about wood turning?
Yeah.
Not very much of a monster.
Yeah, you got to hear him in the middle of the night.
I've had babies. I'm good. I don't need to do that again.
So let's see. What was this one? 1 second. Let me check this. That was a Glowforce. Okay. Just got to make sure I remove these things out of here. So we got all kinds of stuff. Should we jump into some trend sharpening? We got more Schlesinger talking sharpening.
Yeah, let me give you a little background for Morris. If you ever go to like the extravaganza or something, you'll hear me and him bicker constantly just to get attention to basically the sharpening side. For years, he used to razz me all the time for using a Tormek and said the only thing you need is a Wolverine system in the trend system, and which the trend system is great for quick homes and that type of thing. But now he's also come to the conclusion that I was right on the Tormek, but we bicker back and forth all the time with it anyway. So super good guy. He knows his products. He knows how to use them. So definitely kudos to Morris.
Absolutely. Real quick with Jerry, those Hickory guys are nuts. Yeah, we're your people. Speaking of the Hickory guys, so the first time I ever met Morris Schlesinger was at the Hickory retail store, and he was doing a demonstration on pepper mills. And he was showing his Forstner bit, and it was an old Forstner bit. It was rusty, and it was creating a lot of dust. And he took his Trend Diamond tool. It was a little short hone, and he basically just hit the flats. He didn't do the profiles or the beveled edges. He sharpened the flat sides of everything. And he had me come to the lathe, grab a hold of the chip when it started coming out, like the whatever was being ejected. I can't even think of what that's called right now. All of a sudden my mind went blank. I apologize. But basically the spiral that was coming off the chip. And it was one continuous piece. And I started walking backwards with it. And I probably got about 15 feet before it broke. But that just impressed me because that Forstner bit looked like he had literally dug it up out of the ground. It was so rusty. But it cut like a champ.
He probably buried it in a flower pot before he came.
Probably. Knowing him for that extra effect, absolutely.
Yep.
Sharpen router bits. Yeah, so Jerry says that Trend sent him a small set. He uses sharpen router bits, shaper bits, saw blades, and won't use anything else on his knives. I agree. It's a very nice diamond stone, really.
Actually, if you get the Tormek, you hit it with that leather strop, you'd be surprised.
So what, Trend doesn't have a leather? Yeah, they've got a leather strop now and a micro polish. Just FYI.
Yeah, but you got to do more motion on that. Let the wheel turn and you just hold it against it and just kind of barely pull. Yeah, I'm lazy, dude. You hadn't figured that out yet?
I don't think it's lazy, it's efficiency.
How much to invest in the Tormek system? How much to
buy it used? That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I bought my first new from your store. What was it? In what, 96, 97 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, when you bought it, it's going to last you. That's what I like about Tormek. Yep. If you buy one, it's going to be the last sharpening system you need to buy. So where it may seem like an initial investment is a little bit higher than maybe a Trend Diamond Stone, it's well worth it.
Yep.
Well, and it said between all the full sharpening systems, it has the most versatility for sharpening a little bit of everything. Like if you got a traditional planer with the planer blades, let me tell you, you can take stuff it wouldn't cut butter, and you have to put tape on them to put them in because they'll cut you when you're trying to set them back in the machine.
Yeah, the
in a matter of a couple minutes. I mean, it's like amazing.
It is. So, Mr. Peter Brown asks if we have tried the Kodiak sharpening system.
I've not heard of it.
If I'm not mistaken, that's just another Canadian company making a Wolverine. It looks just like a Wolverine, but I think it's a different color. And he likes the feel in his hand. He can see what's happening when it's happening and not after you're past. Yeah, it's true. Especially with the trend stuff, you can definitely get a good feel for it. All of the knives we have are all sharpened with that just because it's real quick. Okay, it is similar. I thought I've seen it before at a wood turning symposium. It was the Kodiak system was very similar to the Wolverine. As far as you use your bench grinder and set it up. All right, let's take a look at this one.
Welcome you to this virtual symposium.
I'm going to jump ahead. I apologize because there's a bunch there, but we'll get right to Mr. Morris.
That are carbide tipped. All right. Now, I've tried these out. They work very well. And the way that we're going to sharpen them is quite similar. What I'll take to start with is the credit card stone. And you'll find that either the small tapered files or the credit card stone are going to work. One of the two of them are going to work really well for you. Everyone has a touch, and you have to find the one that's going to work best for you. But with the carbide, with the main cutters, we do the same thing. We're finding the flat. Watch the carbide show up.
That's awesome.
I'm using a finer stone on the carbide than I use on the steel. You can see the carbide coming off. And what we're trying to do is maintain that flat. Now, when I'm getting up here on the chip breakers, this is a little, it will work, but it's a little awkward for me. So what I do is I go to something smaller that will work a little bit better for me. And a little more lapping fluid. It just takes a touch, but it does such a good job and it makes things work just so much better. But again, we're just coming up and finding the flat. Flip it over, find the flat. Come to the other side and find the flat. And find the flat one more time. But if you notice, I'm moving the stone, I'm not moving the bit. And you can see the amount of carbide that's coming off just with a few strokes. Okay? All right, just to give you an idea of the amount of material we took off with just off the carbide, and you saw the few strokes that it took, just clean it off on a white piece of paper. And you can see the amount of material that came off. Now, we all know in sharpening, to get a sharp edge and bring those two planes together to where they're at the proper angle to do the job that you wanted to do, material has to be removed. What we want to do is remove the least amount of material to get the sharpest product we have. This is the only way that I know of that it can get there. But that's the amount of material that just a few strokes with a 600 grit tapered file pulled off of that carbide. I found that I get better results and better cutting action by using the trend diamond lapping fluid. It's a very lightweight petroleum product of some sort, and I really don't know what it consists of, but it's super lightweight, and it allows the diamonds to cut rather than fill the space between the diamonds.
So I guess it's an important part of our.
So, by the way, it is not Windex and mineral oil. I tried that. It was not the formulation for the trend lapping fluid.
Well, let me go ahead and tell you something else that it's more of the safety side of it. You do not want to use those diamonds on carbide without some sort of liquid on it, because carbide dust is very toxic to the body. You do not want to breathe it in. So definitely use something. Their honing fluid that they're using is also designed to extend the life of the diamond, so you don't damage the diamond. So if you just think and use water, you're going to wind up diamonding the diamonds quicker than you are using their honing fluid.
Yes, and don't use a lot of pressure. I found that out the hard way. They have one of those steel rods for doing kitchen knives, which is, if you're used to using a standard steel rod, you apply a lot of pressure to do it.
Yep.
I basically wasted $50 right off the bat. It took like 2 minutes and I wore out that diamond because I didn't know any better.
Right.
That's when I started asking questions. So Jerry says it works best if you put the bit in a drill press or lathe, unplugged, of course, to help stabilize the bit. Okay, that makes sense. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of using just, two hands, that would make a lot of sense. Keep it straight. Not to mention, doing it dry will break microchips on the cutting edge.
Yes.
Yep.
Because carbide is actually very brittle if it's hit.
Which brings us to another point on sandpaper. I know you think, hey, how did he transition this? But silicon carbide is very similar to diamond. It's very hard. The downside is it's also very brittle. So if you have wet, dry sandpaper, use lower pressure. Don't press down on it in order to get the abrasive action to happen. It's actually a very sharp grain that's made to fracture under pressure. So light pressure will go a much further distance than heavy pressure. There's your sandpaper tip for the day.
Yep.
Wait, Chris, did you say something about sandpaper? Because we are having 20% off discs, 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. I'd throw that in there
as well.
Apparently, we're supposed to be selling stuff at this. I don't know how that works, but yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff's asking about the Easy Wood tools. Is there a special right now, especially the hollowing ones?
All Easy Wood tools are supposed to be 10% off, Jeff. Jeff is in the AAW trade show, joining us live there at the AAW, which this is the AAW Wood Turning Symposium weekend.
And our bandsaw blades are also on sale. And if you're doing a lot of wet wood, we've got a very, very good blade that's from Timberwolf that's specifically designed for wet wood. So what that allows you to do is cut that much more easily, and you get a lot less buildup from that wet timber back on the blade. And look for that AS designation at the end of the blade, and that'll be the one you know is specifically for your wet wood.
You're not alone on that, Jerry. It amazes us how many people really don't know how to use sandpaper as well. It's not one of those things that you would just assume works this way, or press down harder and you get better results. Or if you use it, it gets finer as you use it, so it can be used for finer grits. All of those are myths, which we'll cover next week on Abrasive and Proud of It. Myths, myth, and legend. Abrasives. Let's do it right. No, I just made up the title. It didn't work at all, but I'll take it.
That was a nice try.
Yeah, it was. Hey, because we do have to do that. I've got sheets now. I've got all kinds of paperwork I've been working on for the past 6 months.
So because you're abrasive and proud of it.
We are. As a matter of fact, let me show you that we are. Boom, there it is. So Chris and I last year did a live show for a couple of months. That was abrasive and proud of it. Basically just trying out the live format, and then we've gotten better as time has gone on. And so now we want to come back strong and full with things that are actually helpful, not just sales. We have figured out that doing the sales pitch thing is great and we got to sell things, but at the same time, why don't we give you some information you can actually walk away with that may make your life easier as far as abrasives goes. And then like in this case here with wood turning, we learned a lot of things about finish today, chucks, lathes, you name it.
Knowledge is power, so it's important that we share that knowledge to give you more power in your shop. Better understand not only what you're buying or what you're using, but also how you can achieve the better results on the end of the product.
And speaking of knowledge is power, 20 kilograms is 44 pounds. I'm sorry, freedom units. Google. Yes, that is very true. Yeah, that is an opinion there, isn't it? So, grinding wheels. So when it comes down, that's one of the things. We have a video coming out soon that is about grinding wheels, cutoff wheels, how to use them correctly. Because I see a lot of people in videos that they're treating them incorrectly, which is very dangerous to you when it's spinning at 10,000 RPM. So as Jerry says here, let the material do the work. So in this case, at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, Chris and I have a rule that the machine is the machine. So the sander, the grinder, you name it. The abrasive is the tool. Let the tool do the work. Don't try to force it.
Yep.
Check his last comment out.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, we just thought we got
Yeah,
better.
I just thought you were trying to skirt what he was actually saying earlier, which is why I didn't make a comment.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
I was avoiding it. We've gotten smarter about it, not better. I guess is the way to put it.
Yes. Like my fantastic. See, Chris has got this nice green screen background. It looks professional. I've got a reflection. So yeah, we've gotten a ton better. See, we're at 2.5 hours. Boy, this is definitely the longest live show any of us have ever done that I know of. So while we're at it, let's see here. Should we do? Oh, hey, I know what we'll do. Let me remove this one.
By this week, you mean Scott? Oh,
we'll do finishing. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about finishing because I know that there's a lot of wood turners that finish with. Not even going to show that comment, Jerry. I'm just going to say thank you. Yeah, that's basically the point. But a lot of people will use spray lacquers, aerosol cans, things of that nature. And at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, we carry a lot of different types of Mohawk, Deft. So what do a lot of them mean? What are they going to come into use for your project? So we made a video last year during our virtual extravaganza that kind of explained a little bit about what each line of aerosol can does. So you guys ready for that one? Yeah. Please forgive the big guy in the front.
Mohawk Consumer aerosol cans. These will go from your regular lacquer finish all the way up to specialty finishes. So today we're going to talk about why you should use one over the other and everything in between. So first up, we have the tone finish lacquers. These are your standard nitrocellulose lacquers. They are good for anything that's going to be decorative but not handled. So let's say you're going to have moisture, heat, anything that's going to be in a scratch kind of area or a high traffic area, this might not be the finish for you. But if you have anything like a mirror or a decorative turned piece and you want a nice flowing finish, then this it has the sanding sealer. It comes in flat, satin, semi-gloss, and gloss. So therefore you can find the right sheen to match your project. Up next is the M102 pre-catalyzed sanding sealer lineup. We have everything from the sanding sealer itself for dead flat, flat, satin, semi-gloss, and gloss sheens. This is where you would want to use something in a higher traffic situation, such as in kitchens or bathrooms, anything that's going to be handled more frequently. Some place where basically you're going to have a lot of human interaction to where you have hot, cold, liquids coming in contact with the film finish. It does lay out very nicely, and it is widely used across the industry for touch-up. So if you have a project where you want a little bit more durability than the tone finish, then the pre-catalyzed clear would be the way to go. Next up, we have the sanding sealer and easy vinyl sealer lineup. The tone finish sanding sealer is more recommended for the tone finish line. The pre-catalyzed sanding sealer is a little bit hard, more durable, and scratch resistant for the pre-cat sanding line. But the easy vinyl is kind of a universal sealer that lays down very nicely for all lacquer mediums that you're going to be using. The bonding agents in the easy vinyl bond very well to pre-existing finishes and therefore make the Mohawk products you want to put on top bond even better. So if you want a one-stop shop all-around sealer, the easy vinyl is a great choice. Otherwise, you have your specialty tone finish or your pre-catalyzed. Next up, we have our no blush blender flowouts and super no blush retardants. These are if you have a blushing instance where it's kind of a milky white rainbow prismatic look to your lacquer finishes. This will work in either if you're spraying large projects or using aerosol cans. The no blush blender with flat means that if you have a flat or a matte finish, that's the can that you use. If you have a satin to semi-gloss, the blender flowout satin will be a great choice. And if you have a super gloss finish, the super no blush retarder, or in this case, the super blush retarder, would be the way to go. So,
all right, so I'm just going to stop this one real quick and mention this. A lot of people don't know that if you have a piece of furniture at home, if you have a turned piece, whatever the case may be, and it's been finished in lacquer, these are going to be the easiest fix for that particular finish if it has white marks, you know, heat, the cold, the wet, you know, you put a glass on it, someone forgot to use a coaster, heaven forbid, then all of a sudden it turns white. That's what these are for. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, because when we did this video, I forgot to mention that. And we get a lot of people asking comments as far as, hey, I got white rings, you know, how do I take care of those white rings? How do I get rid of these scratches? And so if it's a lacquer finish, that's what you use, is this. And what it does is it remelts the lacquer, allows that scratch to flow out, allows the white to come out of the finish, and pretty much just makes it go back to what it was. The caveat to all of this is that you have to make sure you match your sheen level, flat, satin, and then gloss. Because if you use a gloss on a flat, you're going to see where you try to repair that, it's going to be a lot shinier in that one spot. So I just wanted to make sure I covered that real quick. Any questions from you guys? Chris is muted, so therefore no questions. We'll carry on.
Yeah. If you're using this product and you have got a lacquer that you know is a lacquer product, make sure that you have not got any wax on top of that.
Why? What would that happen? What would that do?
Well, it won't work.
Oh.
It won't do what you're asking it to do if there's wax between it and the previous coat of lacquer.
Yeah, if
And
you got
Mr.
wax.
Miyagi,
Yep, you have to wax on and wax off. If you do have wax, then it's the wax that's showing, not the lacquer. So then you just have to rebuff it. That's easy, though. Carry on. Or not.
Press play.
I did.
Oh.
Let me go ahead and just do this again.
these 3 cans right here are great within 48 hours of spraying the finish. If you have any blushing to occur, you just lightly mist it across the surface. You try not to saturate it, and you will get perfect results every time and remove that blush.
I have to cover this one real quick. This is pretty funny. So Jerry wants to know, so if you use a wet rag and an iron to pull grain or a dent back up on a finished piece, this would repair the finish if the finish is damaged. If you're doing that with an iron and you then cause the finish to crack, or you cause the finish to delaminate from a mechanical bond to the piece, then no, this will not help it. But if it does turn white because you added moisture and heat, yes, this will help get this back. The other can will help it get back to on point. Hope that answered your question.
For decades, Mohawk Finishing has made one of the best lacquer for brasses in the industry, but it only came in gloss. Up until this year, they've recently released a matte and a satin finish. So if you're looking to reshine your brass fixtures and then protect them for years of untarnished surface, then I would highly recommend the Lacquer for Brass lineup. New this year from Mohawk Consumer is going to be the outdoor acrylic aerosol. If you're looking for a fast drying lacquer type of top coat finish that is made for exterior use, finally Mohawk has come out with an outdoor acrylic. This is fast drying. It comes in flat, satin, and gloss, so everything above the water line you can finish, like duck decoys, anything that's going to be outside on like the patio or porch in direct sunlight or indirect sunlight and the exposure to all the elements. This is a fantastic finish to check out. So in recent years, just the pre-catalyzed lacquers have always been good. The tone finishes have been okay as far as you just want a regular lacquer finish. But when you're looking for no orange peel, long flash off time, which means before the film actually forms over the coat that you just applied, the Ultra Flow Clear Lacquer is just one of the best products on the market. If you're finishing, for instance, any kind of hardware, metal, and you want a nice flowed surface without any imperfections, overspray, orange peel, then this is the product for you. With the introductions of UV finishes in the market, cab acrylics, conversion varnishes, it's kind of hard to find a nice touch-up aerosol to go along with those. So Mohawk has the Ultra Flow Ultra Bond Clear, and what that means is that it will bond to almost any existing finish for touch-up work. If you've ever had to work with any kind of CV finishes or UV finishes, you'll know that not always does a touch-up job go really well. If you're looking for just general great bond to maybe existing finishes that are in the market, if you're into antiques or anything, this is a great product as well. Just straight bare wood might be a little bit much, but at the same time, the flow characteristics and the Ultra Bond are going to be a great top-notch finish. Comes in flat, satin, semi-gloss, and gloss.
Scintillate. So the rest of it we don't need. But Chris, you have switched over to the Ultra Flow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I recently switched over on the last project that I did, and I'm a huge fan now. I think I'm gonna. Not that I'll maybe do that forever, but especially where I'm at in humid areas, I'm always concerned about different things, and that seemed to flow on really well. It dried fast, and I had zero issues with any of the blushing or anything that I was getting with the other regular pre-cat.
So Jerry's doing, let's see here, Jerry's got a few comments. So it will usually turn white if done right. Yeah, so anytime you're introducing moisture and heat to a lacquer finish, it'll typically turn white. And it's really just the moisture getting into the film. If it's pre-catalyzed, it doesn't happen as quickly as just a regular nitrocellulose, but a lot of your cab acrylics and your conversion varnishes should not do that because they are a hard film once dry. But yeah, you don't have to spend hours to repair a white area that has from a dent pole. It's really just remelting the lacquer. But again, like Chris mentioned, if there's wax already present on that, sometimes it could actually be the wax turning white. That is one of the properties that wax has. And so therefore it may not be the lacquer, but it's always easy to find out if there's any wax on there by just taking a little bit of, you can use, I would do a little lacquer thinner in an inconspicuous spot to see if it's straight lacquer, if there's wax present. And then oaks are always going to be an issue because of porousness. Walnut, oak, anytime you have open pores present in your finish, you're going to have issues. So you do have to be careful with that. And that's just because of the air. Mm-hmm.
Now, I've also started using the outdoor oil, or excuse me, the outdoor aerosol quite a bit more. I'll make some coasters or anything like that where I know it's going to have contact with water. That outdoor aerosol does really well because you won't get that white issue and water rings like you do if that's the case, with traditional lacquers. So,
yep. And I've used so when we made the video, it was really impressive that Mohawk finally came out with some sort of exterior finish because they hadn't for years. They were mainly focused on the furniture industry, mainly focused on large furniture factories. And then as that had left the United States, they had to reconfigure themselves as a finishing company and then went to a consumer line. So therefore you can now buy gallons and aerosol cans for touch-up, and all that stuff had been around for years. It just wasn't really available to the general public. So when they finally came out with something that was outdoor, I was absolutely excited because it was exterior. So I did it on a birdhouse. So how I tested it was I did a birdhouse with one half of the exterior finish and one half on a tung oil. And I was really impressed with how fast it dried and how well it looked overall. It didn't turn it super gray. It kept the wood intact. It was plywood. I figured I'd go ahead and make it the worst I possibly could. But it did have the slanted roof. So therefore, water would come off. But I got an idea of how well it would perform. And it did way better than I thought it would. It really did.
Hey, Jerry, that's already occurred. He's already been probed and returned. So he's back with us.
Oh, yeah. Hey, appreciate that. Yeah. I really like Scott's though. Dare to dream. Whatever. Still find that funny. All right. So that's the finishing. If you have any questions on finishing, we're more than happy to help answer or direct, however, maybe it would work best for you in your application. When it comes down to wood turning, we had mentioned it earlier that I don't always go for the 400 grit sanding sequence. Yes, I understand that you're wood turning. You just want to get it done. The fun part is actually creating what you have made on the lathe. The less fun part is finishing it up so it looks pretty. So I understand that you want to sand it finer and finer because this is really the only application in woodworking that is cross grain scratches almost everywhere because you have both in surface and end grain. Sorry, edge surface and end grain. And so therefore, when you sand finer, those scratches get smaller and smaller. So I get that part of it. But the downside is with wood is that anything over 220 grit starts to burnish the wood. You start to polish it. So if you want a utilitarian finish, sand up to 220 before you're applying your oil, before you're applying your finish. That way it'll have more of a bond with the wood itself. Now, if you're going to make a display piece, yeah, you can sand up to 400. You just have to be careful with what type of wood it is. If it's an oily type of wood and you're going to put a water-based finish on there, you may not want to sand it up so fine because then you're going to have adhesion problems and probably have peeling, cracking, or other things that may happen. Scott, what is your take on this?
Sand till you're tired and stop.
Sand till you're tired and stop. Yeah.
Well, that would be 120.
What do you mean 36?
Oh, that brick we talked about earlier?
There you go. It depends on what you're trying to do. Like some woods, you can see more of the scratches in it than others. So, it depends on the wood too. If it's like an oak, you got other grains and stuff in there to hide some of the real finer scratches. I may not go all the way up, but if it's a good clear piece of maple, I may sand it all the way up, into the 400 range.
Well, and maples, cherries, anything that's closed off like that and hard is not going to be as bad. That's probably in regular traditional woodworking. Cherry up to 400 can have really beautiful finishes, but it's just not something you do with all woods. So that's the only, not a gripe, I guess I'd say. It's just something I always found that just every wood turn, no matter who it was, it's like there's some sort of universal sanding rule that goes up to 400. And the only thing
there's a lot of folks that go way beyond that.
I know. I always figured the joke is that our LS312 that we have here pictured, it only goes up to 400. So that's why they stop, because it's the wood turner's gold sandpaper. But yeah, no, there's people out there that aren't wood turners that go up to 1,000 grit. And yeah, I don't know why. I really haven't figured out what their point is, because it looks good when you initially finish it, but let me see it 6 months from now.
Right.
I want to see how it held up in just regular.
Now there are times rather that higher grits would benefit you. One of those is if you're a pin turner and you're turning acrylic or some kind of metal.
It's not wood.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you that option as to when you would want to go to those higher ranges.
Then you've got shallow wax that you can that are triple E sheen that you, once you take it to 400, and it'll buff it to somewhere neighborhood of 10,000 straight off the bat, not even have to worry about the paper at that point. You do it in one fatal swoop.
Well, I'll disagree with that, because it may seem like it's doing it, but it's like you mentioning earlier, why does someone start with 320? They're going to be sanding a lot longer. You want to sand up on that plastic as high as you can go with a paperback abrasive, then switch over to a buffing compound. Otherwise, you're going to be doing the same thing. You'll be sitting there forever trying to get those coarse scratches out of that acrylic.
Yeah, but after you get to 400, it'll take out pretty much everything you're going to see beyond that anyway.
Perfection.
Just with that.
I prefer hitting it with a micro mesh and working my way up the range that way and not using any compounds at all. But that's...
Jerry's got it pointed right there. He gets tired just thinking about sanding. Where do you think the rustic look came from? Those who didn't have Klingspor abrasives, that's where it came from.
They just use the cinder block.
Yeah, they just use that cinder block.
Cinder block. Why would you? Bag.
I don't quite get why the finish won't stick at 2,000 grit. I'm guessing because it's already polished and there's no need for finish.
At 2,000 grit became your finish.
Yeah. Well, there was someone out there that actually sanded up to 12,000 grit with micro mesh on a wood and epoxy sign, and they sanded the whole thing all the way up. So it was glossy, but it was bare wood. The downside is get it wet.
Yep.
You know, get it introduced to moisture, that finish will not last for more than a week. But hey, it looked good on video, so I'll go with it.
That's where wax comes into play.
All right. So talk to me about wax, Chris.
No, I mean, if you're going to go that high, that's really the only thing you could use is some kind of wax, because you've closed the grain. You're not getting any kind of oil to stick. So, you know, wax is really your best option.
Now, do you know what wax does for a finish, though? Why do people use wax for a finish? Is it just food safe, or why would someone choose wax?
It just creates a very soft, protective finish, and it's easy to maintain.
What you got, Scott?
And just wax, just easy to put on. That's just why people use it.
Wax is easy to put on. The other thing is, the only finish out there that will do this, you know, we talked about chatoans with oil in the finish. Wax is the only thing that'll give you this depth to your finish that nothing else can ever match. The downside is that I have a rule in finishing: once you go wax, you don't go back. So make sure you're done with everything before you apply wax. Otherwise, trying to remove it is just it's a nightmare.
Now, Mohawk used to make a product. Actually, it wasn't might have been Mohawk, called Buff Coat, and that stuff was really good. It was from a subsidiary of Mohawk called Star, and that Buff Coat was fantastic. It left a waxed on look with the depth. It looked like a hand rubbed finish instead of a lacquer. It was really good.
They still have it. I'll have to find. I mean, I know we have it. It should be called Buff Coat now. Balin, after Star, it was Balin. Originally, that is waxed infused lacquer. It's a nitrocellulose with wax, heavy body wax in it, and so therefore, when it dries, it does give you that hand rubbed look. And it only came in 20 and 40 sheen. Used it a lot. The downside was it scratched real easily. It was not a good finish for anything like a kitchen or anything that you're going to be using a lot of. It was not a good finish for that.
Yeah, it was really good for furniture pieces where you were wanting to put more of a focus on the wood, not really going to be handled like in a traditional kitchen.
A nice display piece. Jerry says that a lady brought him a table that she did too and didn't understand why the finish beaded on it. I took a DA to it. Yeah, you got to sand it down, but I'm guessing the beaded was a wax. Wax was present. Just like a car. You know, whenever you wax a car and the water beads up, same thing's going to happen when you try to put a finish over top of a wax. It's going to become an issue and not look pretty. And then, of course, the finish is going to dry in this funny circle look, almost like a sprinkler or a rain shower on a black car. You're going to see those water droplets. Yeah. So, just surprised we're still going. We're still awake.
And we're not finished yet.
Okay, that's it. I'm going to mute you right now.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the craziness that is Jerry Miesemer. I'm going to skip ahead. It's a very long video, but at the same time, a lot of what he's explaining in the beginning, we don't necessarily need in this. But what Jerry does is that he turns birdhouses. He's known also for turning hats. He does full-size cowboy hats. But he got into doing these birdhouses and how he does it and how his approach to it. And he does everything for the most part on the lathe, even all the way down to the perch. He does everything that he can on the lathe. It's pretty impressive. So we did a film of that, and we'll go ahead and show that now. Anyone have any questions before we go? Okay, or stop me in the middle of it if you want to. Just let me know if you have a question or you want to make a comment on it. I'd be happy to do that.
I've already got the holes drilled.
By the way.
And then we got to cut it off. And there's our first piece for this morning, but that's a good practice for you to do. And it's a great item you could give your grandkids, your kids, whatever. My grandson, seemed like every time he come over to the shop, he always wanted me to make him a top. So what I did for him for Christmas, I made him 100 of them. Different sizes, different shapes, and that's what his Christmas gift was. Just call me the tight granddaddy. we don't normally. I like making things for people. It means more to me that I can make something, and it means more for the person receiving. So, okay, we're going to get started on the birdhouse. And I've got two different styles, and we're going to make this one first. Now, I have been asked by people that are bird people. They're ortho something. They're called, they got a name. I don't know what they're called, the people. They got letters behind them too. But they tell me that a hummingbird is not gonna go in this house. Well, all I know is we've sold thousands of these, thousands of them, and we give them the opportunity to. So if you don't give a bird an opportunity to go in a house, how is he going to go in a house? Someone originally had to build the first bluebird house. And how many people are building bluebird houses? Well, that's what I feel about the hummingbird houses. So, and it is a great wood turning piece to make because everything is made. Everything is made. Even down to the perch. We make the perch. We make the top. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make the string and I didn't make the eyelet, but everything else is made. So, and learned how to do a little bit of wood burning. I'm not a wood burner, but Michelle Parsons is, and she will be here later on next week. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an 8/4 stock. 8/4 stock is 2 inches thick. So that's what's considered 8/4 stock. It's all in the rough. 8/4 is about 2 1/8. So what I do is I rip these down as square as I can get them. Okay, then I go to my drill press and I go down from the top and drill a 1 inch hole right here. So it's about 1.5 inches down. I drill an inch hole. Okay, from the top to the perch, I drill an 1/8 of an inch hole, and that's 2.5 inches down. So it's easy numbers. And it just looked proportionally correct is how I come up with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this the same way as I did the top, okay? I'm not going to put a tenon in it. I'm going to put it in the 4 corners of the jaws of the chuck. And I typically look at my chuck when I'm putting it in to make sure it's all evenly spaced, and it's all by eye. When you're doing about 300 of these at a time, you just chuck them in and go with it. All right? And then, oh, you're not supposed to bend down and pick up nothing. I remember that rule from class. So, I don't know if you could. This is an inch and a half drill bit, okay? My goal is just to drill past the perch hole. That's what my goal is. Because we're not for sure how deep we really need to have it for these hummingbirds. So we're experimenting. So we're gonna turn the lathe on and we're gonna slow it down. I like to run it about 500, 600. And we're gonna bring this in. We're gonna lock it down, okay? And then we're gonna crank it up. And we're just gonna drill past the perch. And we want to clean it a little bit. Come back out. So as you can see, this takes some time. Just drilling these things takes a massive amount of time. And the first ones I did, I guess the first, I don't know, 400 or 500, this is how we did it. It was a real fluke that I got into doing birdhouses. And they're actually in our state magazine here in North Carolina. They sell them in the magazine. And we have a couple galleries that we sell them in. Okay, we're getting ready to turn the birdhouse. This is a piece of plastic. I don't know what type it is. It was given to me, and I threaded it. And the reason I put it on the live center, and I like using this piece of plastic as a jam chuck. It's got some certain name to it. I don't know what the name of it is. I've had it ever since 2008, so, and now I'm getting older and I don't remember things. So, okay, the reason why I put the plastic on there, and we're gonna, if you see, there's no tiny hole down here. Okay, I didn't want to put no little holes in the bottom of the birdhouse because when I sign my name, I want to be able to sign it. I'm doing these things fast, so some of my signatures may be in the middle or maybe on the side. I just want to burn it and go because I'm doing so many of these. So I don't have the little hole in the way. Plus it's easy to jam chuck it. Okay, I made a jam chuck. This is just a block of wood. And I turned it around, and what happens is this fits right in there just like that. So we're going to stick this in the chuck. For everybody that wants to know, this is a one-way chuck, and this was my first chuck, and I've had it ever since 2008. So. And I just tighten it up pretty good, run it, make sure it runs smooth, looks good to me. All right, then we're just going to stick this in here, there, just like that. And I just want to give me a little bit of room. And we're going to jam it. That's why it's called a jam chuck, jam it. Okay, then we're going to tighten everything back down. Spin it, make sure it's not going to hit anything. Okay, it's not going to hit anything. So I need to lower my tool rest just a hair. All right, now we're going to crank it up. Okay, and then we're just going to do just like we always do. We're going to take the tool, the rough and gouge, and we're going to go back and forth. We're riding on that bevel. And yes, you can cut backwards. See how it's cutting backwards? I'm cutting forward. I'm cutting backwards. Okay, I want to start putting a little taper towards the bottom. So here's our taper. I just want to make it round. Okay, when you try to, you know, when you're turning a lot, you put your hand over here like that and feel it. Remember, this has a hole in it, and that hole hurts if your finger goes near it. So if you get hurt after me telling you that, that's your fault, not mine. Because I've already told you you're going to get hurt.
And he knows.
Yes, he does.
Okay, see, I'm still not round. Okay, we're going to turn it off. I'm going to show you what we got. We're not quite round yet. Okay, see, I still got a little bit right there. And you see the thickness of my wood, so I still got plenty of wood in here. So let's get her down. Okay, we should be feeling pretty good now. Sounding pretty good. Yep, that's smooth. Okay, I like to put a little decorative piece on the bottom. So I take the rough and gouge and I just end in it just like that. Just real slow and make that little curve in there. Okay, we're going to bring out a new tool. Okay, this is a cove. if you can see it, I don't know about the glare. See, I got this one polished up too. This is a Sorby beading tool. Okay, I got this tool in 2008 when I first started. And so the tools last you a long time. I don't know how these companies stay in business. Not when they have somebody like me that's had it for this long. Okay, the only thing that on the birdhouses, when I started doing the birdhouses, you know, I'm worried about the thickness in here. So when I'm doing the other birdhouse, which I'm going to show you that, the thickness has a lot to do with it. So what I did is I cut that bead down a little bit. I actually grinded the tool flat. And then I made a wheel on my grinder. And then I set it at an angle and I made my own curve here, and it looks like a half a bead, but it's not a half a bead. So when the product is done, it still looks like it, but it's not going in as deep. Now it took a lot of trials and errors to get that, but that's what I ended up doing. So, and I'm not telling you to get a new tool and grind it down. Just get thicker wood, but this is 8/4. So, okay, we're going to make a bead right here. And I just kind of move it around a little bit. Now, could you turn it with a spindle gouge, make a bead with the spindle gouge? Yes. Now, this is a 1/2-inch spindle gouge, and yes, I've had this one a long time too. And it's, I'm ready for a new one. So I just come in there and I clean that up a little bit, and then I'm coming back on this back side, and see how I just spin that around like that, and then I'm coming back over the top, and that's how I shape that bottom. Okay, just like that. And then I come back with my rough and gouge, and I bring all my cuts together. Just like that. All right. I also like the wood burn, or use a burning wire. This is a burning wire. This is actually wire that cuts out windshields, and these are the handles. But you can get burning wire, guitar wire, and you just place it on there and let it burn. Just like that. Now I have got, when I use the wire, it's not like I'm just dangling the wire up there. You got to remember, this is rotating, and you want to hold this wire. So a lot of times I'll hold my forearm on the lathe, and I've got my other arm tucked in, and I'm burning it like that. That's how I'm doing it. So you got to be real careful when you're burning. You just can't stick it in there. Okay, the next thing I do, free advertisement for Klingspor. I use Klingspor paper, brought to you by Klingspor. And I don't put my hand underneath the tool rest, okay? So if you're going to sand, you can go over top like that. You could put this in reverse, or you can go under like that, okay? So you can sand it. And this is 180. So I just sand it off a little bit. And then the grain of the wood's going up and down. But with the products that we're making, I'll go like this, and it's done, okay? As many as we're doing. So that is the bottom. That's what we do with the bottom. All right? Then we got to make the top. So, okay, these are the tops. This, I buy 10/4 walnut. This is 10/4 walnut, and I turn it round. This is 7 inches long. And I just put it in here in the chuck, just like this. There's no tinning. I do bring this up. Okay, so I'm going to lock that in. And then I'm going to tighten this down. Okay, the tops are all made out, I usually, well, on the ones for the magazine, they're all made out of walnut. And this is the kind of the mode we've been in. It's just the walnut tops. So we tighten that down. Move it in as close as you can. Okay, and then we're going to true it up. So we true it up. Okay, so that's true. Okay, I divide it up. I got my dividers right here. So we're going to divide this up to about 1 3/4 inches. Okay, and then we're going to cut it. We've got to make a tenon. This is the bottom. This is the tenon right there. Okay, and this one's a tenon. So we're actually making 4 of them. Okay, I'm going to open it up just a little bit for my next tool coming in here. Okay, this is what you call a badan. Nick Cook told me to get a badan back in 2008, and this is the same one that I had. So we're going to open that up, and we're going to go one more. Okay, we ought to be pretty good. Let me. Okay. So I was making so many of these, I needed to come up with a way to make them faster. Remember what I was saying? Production's faster. Safer and faster, safer and faster. So Sorby has this tenon jig that I bought, and I decided to put the Robert Sorby tool on this for my tenoning because I only had one badan. This is my original badan. Well, it wouldn't fit. See, it wouldn't fit on there right. So I said, well, I wonder if I could fit it on here, and it fit right, fit perfect. It's actually a better deal for me because when this tip gets cracked, chipped, dull, I only have to unscrew that, and I don't ever have to change my setting. And that's another movement I don't have to do. So one less movement. But no one tells you how to use these things. I have looked and looked, and no one tells you. There's their kind of so-called instructions. So you got to be real careful running these things. And I kind of get set up. My body is set up. My whole body is into this. Now you see the top part right here. It's rubbing the back side. So it's still rubbing. Now, I had to learn that if I didn't make that tenon, this was not going to work because this wouldn't fit in there. So I had to give it room. See, it only gives you a little bit of room. And you see that tenon was a little bit bigger. And you seen how that grabbed a little bit. So that's what you got to be careful of. See how it did all that? Which that ain't no big deal. We can take care of that. Okay, the next thing you do is on my tops, I like putting a little bead down here. So I had to figure out a way when I first started. That one might be a goner there. We'll see. Let me see if I can straighten her up a little bit. Yeah, she'll work. That'll work. Okay. when I first started doing the tops, you want to make things decorative, or I did. I wanted to make it look like I spent a lot of time on these things and not spend much time on them. So you see this bead right there? Okay, I had this chucked up, just the top, into my lathe, and I was running that bead. Well, my jaws are right here, so it wasn't doing real good. But I made a lot of them like that. And then you have this moment you figure out how to do things. So I had one of them good moments, and I said I could make that bead now instead of later. So I use it right here. And so we're going to have 4 of these. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Feels good. That feels good. All right, so now we'll burn it. And you can burn it now, you can burn it later, it don't matter. So, and usually I burn it now because when I'm making the tops, I'm just making them and putting them in a basket. Okay, now we got to part them. All right, we got to part them off. I do like to make sure everything fits good. See, that one fits good. All right. So this is a parting tool. So this one, we're just going to go in here and we're going to open it up a little bit. Because that's, you know, you got 7 inches sticking out there. Okay, there's one. All right, and every so often I check just to make sure my tenon is good and all that. Make sure everything, see, it fits. I'm not having to remeasure anything. And I'll usually do like 20 or 30 of them, then check and just go back and forth. Okay, and then we'll cut off the last one. Okay, and let's check this one since this is the one we had problem with. And it's a little tight, but she's snug. Let me, we'll rerun it, it don't matter. Took off a little bit. That's a whole lot faster than taking another tool, doing it. And I mean, here I got 4 tops ready to go, ready to be rechucked and turned. All right. Okay. Next thing we do is we take this chuck off. We've got to turn the top. And designing these things, I tried to work with the tools that I had. And that's what I tried to do. It's just what tools I had is the tools I'm going to try to run it. And I had this. So I figured I could run that tenon in here. The process of these things didn't take overnight. It took me a while to get this thing figured out, how to do it and make as many as we do. My wife and I she glues the tops on and puts the perches on, sends them out. Okay, there's our first one. We got it chucked. And then I get my 1/2-inch spindle gouge, wherever it is. Okay. Okay, she's running true. Now what okay, just like so. This is the roof of the birdhouse. Remember, this is the roof. Okay, the other thing I've made, and I've had this since the beginning of these birdhouses, that same drill bit. I do scroll sawing. I don't know what number this is, but this drill bit will go right here and it just goes in just like that. And I made a little handle. I painted it pink so I wouldn't lose it. And I've had this thing ever since the beginning. So, unless I leave it at a club or something. Okay, the next thing we do is we're going to taper it down. So I just start from the top and I'm making this curve. And I'm just spinning it around. If you look at the way I sharpened it, my bevel, see how my bevel is? I got a double bevel. Typically it's either 2 or 3 bevels. And a lot of guys that are turning, they're using the Wolverine system, and it doesn't matter what kind of system you use, but it's a jig, and they'll sharpen this whole clear as one bevel. And then what I do is I put a magnet or just something thick, a piece of wood or whatever, and bring the tool even closer. It does that secondary bevel. So the reason why I do a secondary bevel is so I can have that curvature like that. Because if you didn't, it would be bumpity bumpity bump, and you don't want that. I mean, you could see, if you got that, see in the camera, see the daylight right there? These are real good cameras, so you could see the daylight on that secondary bevel. Okay? So we're just going to keep on coming, keep cutting it down, taking a little bit off at a time. Okay, just like that. Okay, then I come back and I like to skin this one over. Just a small, okay? Then I take a texturing tool. This is from Crown. This is a Crown. Sorby has one too. But I've always used this texturing tool. And it has a way to rest it on the tool rest. See, it's flat. I'm not changing the speed. You can change the speed. You get a different texturing pattern. But I basically just run it through just like that. Okay? Just one little wipe. And you see the texture it gave. If you change the speed, it's going to do a different texture. If you change the angle, and since we're making so many, it's just fast, and I don't change the speeds no more. I used to, but not no more. There's just too many of them. Okay, this is the eyelet I put in. Now the main thing about the eyelet is you don't let the machine run while you're putting that eyelet in, because that hurts when that thing's spinning around. And the last finger I broke was this finger, and I was spinning the chuck like this, and my finger got stuck in there just like that, and you see where this tool rest is. It went down like that. That was the only finger I ever heard broke. I literally heard the bone break. So I've got this dental pick, and I stick it there, and then I turn the handle. That's what you want to do. You want to keep your hand away from that chuck. Them jaws sticking out that far, it does hurt. All right. So we'll do 300 of them real fast. And I do sand them off. I just hit them with a little piece of sandpaper. This is pretty smooth. Okay, so this is the top. This is what we have so far. This is what we have so far. Okay, now we've got to do the perch. So, and it's just what I've done from the beginning. I've used ebony. I know that's not the favorite choice of buying, because it is very expensive. I got a box of these pieces. They're a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and then I rip them down to this size. And I stick it all the way in the lathe. Okay? So then I'll bring the jaws down. And we'll okay. All right, so now I'll just make it tight. Okay, then I want to move my tool rest as close as I can move it. Okay. Then this is a tool. This is a 3/8 spindle gouge. Okay, you can see how it's sharpened. There's very little bevel on that, and it's smooth all the way around. And I literally grind, as the grinder's going around, I'm going like this, spinning. Okay, and then I put this on my buffing wheel because I want it to slide. I don't want it to grab. And see, even after work, you know, the wood is dirty too sometimes, so you have to really make sure this is clean after you do so many of them, because it starts sticking. I guess it's the difference in the metal of the cast, and this metal too could cause things. The cast does ding up a little more. So I'm going to use this as my roughing gouge and my turning gouge. So we're going to round it off. Okay, we're going to I'm going to come back this way. I'm going to go back this way. And then I'm gonna do a real fast sweep over, just like that. Remember when we done the top from the beginning? That's how I do that. So I take different steps with everything. So then I take my calipers, and after you do so many of them, you don't need the calipers. You know what 1/8 of an inch is. Now you see how close my tool rest is? I'm gonna shut the lathe off before I move the tool rest. It is real close to the edge of that, and I don't want to nick it. Okay, so we're going to lower it down. So you want it about 1/8 of an inch thick. So, and then we'll check it. Let's see how close we are. We're just a hair big. Okay, and then we'll just part it off with our spindle gouge. And you lose a few of them. But I'll do about 300 of these at a time, just like that, just feeding it. And then that goes in just like that. That's our first birdhouse. In the shop, the bottom piece takes me 1 minute and 35 seconds to do. And the tops, you can tell there's more movement on the tops. It takes a little bit longer. But the typical, because we've really tried to time it down to about a 6 to 7 minute deal here when we're doing these. This goes in our state magazine.
Well, I'll take a break from that, but basically just want to show you how Jerry Miesemer turns a birdhouse and the simple steps that it takes to get there. Yes, he does make it look easy. And Jerry, I agree that watching videos like this makes you want to have a lathe in order to be able to do great turnings. But one of a lot of that video there, we have a whole nother part of it, because when he says that he does that body of that in about 1:30, he's also using a hydraulic press for the Forstner bit. And so that we had that whole thing set up. So I have that video still to do, but that one is actually pretty incredible to watch as far as how he set that whole thing up. And then it just punches that hole out in no time flat. But Jerry has literally broken I think it's every bone in his hand. So every finger. And then having the jaws like that, and he was telling us right before he came to film that he was rotating around the chuck, and he got his finger stuck in one of those long jaws in that little square area there that was kind of showing, and broke that finger. So,
yeah.
If you ever hear this story of Jerry, you'd be amazed that he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He has a tendency to make Tim the Toolman Taylor look like a Mr. Safety.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny about Jerry because when he's like production and safety, those two typically don't go together, making it faster and safer. But I don't know how many times have you been struck by lightning? 3,
at least.
So it's when you get to meet him in person and you realize that it's really quite amazing. He's staying there in front of you, and has all of his fingers.
And I've met him in person. He even autographed my head for me.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I sent you pictures. I didn't know if you wanted to use them or not.
I didn't think to bring that up. I really didn't. I apologize. Maybe I'll make that for tomorrow.
It's in your messenger.
It must be a Jerry thing. I think you're right.
Yeah. When he came and demoed for the club the last time, we gave him a first aid kit as a welcome gift. His wife loved it.
Yeah, they are class act. They come to the extravaganza, and he shows how to turn hats, how to turn birdhouses, you name it, and just great people.
Yeah, I don't think his wife follows him along just for the fun of it. I think she follows him along for the emergency contact information.
Yes,
in case it's got to give it out.
And her phone's on quick dial with 911.
Yes.
Like what was Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse? He carries his own medical history with him. So just here it is. Just take it. But a great guy. I mean, one thing I've found with hanging out with and getting to meet a lot of these wood turners is, unlike other areas of woodworking, they, no matter how big your name is, most of these folks stay very humble and are very down to earth. And that's what I really like about, especially Jerry and his wife. They were just, no matter how big the name gets here in North Carolina and around the country and world, that he's going to always stay humble. And you can tell that about him. And just a really good guy. And him and his wife are both really good people.
Yeah. Without a doubt. That's a good way to describe it. But yeah, there's Jerry after signing Chris's head. And then the aftermath. And the funny thing about Jerry is that he would just find that absolutely hilarious. Just the fact that, someone's even asking for it, but he'll still do it because he thinks it's funny. He enjoys that part of it, is that if it's funny to him, that he'll enjoy it. So, yep, good people. And how long has he been around turning now? Well over 10 years. I mean, he said 2008 when he got started in just the birdhouses, but the birdhouses were way after the cowboy hats, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, I think he said he got his tools in 2008.
Okay. I thought that's when he said he got started on doing all that.
Well, Scott here's done quite a few cowboy hats as well, back in the day.
Yeah, we both learned from the same guy.
Yep.
Do we mention that guy's name?
My mind just went poof.
Chris Ramsey.
There you go. Yeah. And said I learned turning actually at the extravaganza while running the cameras for him to demo. After that first night or day on Friday, watching him turn, I went home and turned my first cowboy hat that night. Came back the next day and started asking him questions. He's asking, "Why are you asking all these questions?" I'm like, "Because I went and turned my first hat last night, and I wanted to figure out what I was doing to make it easier." He looked at me, he's like, "You went home and turned a hat that night?" Yeah.
That was what, 2002, 3,
something like that. Yeah.
It's been a while.
Time flies, I'm telling you. Let me get that one. So I don't bore everybody with more videos, but we got plenty of videos, and we got another half an hour or so. So what do you think? Pyrography, wood carving, or unboxing a Fuji sprayer with Jack Hastings?
I think unboxing the Fuji sprayer, because both of those other ones might take a little longer.
Oh, that's true.
And we need something good for tomorrow anyway. So.
Oh yeah, we got plenty. We can redo. So I'll try to get some of that Jerry stuff done tonight and see if I can't figure that one out. Will you be joining us tomorrow, Scott?
Probably not. I may hop in though if I can.
Okay. Well, the door is always open for you if you'd like to.
Thank you.
If nothing else, get a short snippet video of him just using that cylinder, man. Oh my gravy!
Yeah,
that reminded me of Scott, as scary as that was.
And he made it look so easy too. He was just like, oh yeah, you just have to do this and boom, done. And being in person, seeing it versus in video is pretty like kind of chilling at first, because that thing is just wham bam done. There's your hole. It's drilled.
I think Mike and I both looked at each other and was like, what?
He's like, you guys ready? It's like, did he just do
that? Can you do that again? Maybe we should run this camera in slow motion or something, because it happened just in a fraction of a second.
Yeah, it was so fast. Oh yeah. I think somewhere around 18 years. So Jerry's been around. Jerry Blakesley's been around Klingspor's Woodworking Shop for a while as well. We appreciate that. So yeah, Jerry Meismer, good guy. He came in for a minute, checked it out. He's just that kind of guy he'll go around telling people in his virtual AAW that, you know, his video was shown on Klingspor like that, but that's it. Like that's as far as he goes with it. He doesn't go to his head. It's hilarious.
Well, he heard we were playing his video and decided he wanted to come in and just put his name in the chat. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Well, really wanted to see if he got hurt in that video.
No, we edited that version out.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of cuts where there was one time where he didn't get hurt bad, but he did get his finger stuck in the chuck. So we didn't show that. That's why there's some cuts where you're like, wait, what did he just do? And yeah. Or drop the tool. When he dropped the tool while the lathe was still going, that's why he made the comment not to pick things up, because just before that, he dropped something and went to pick it up. And then you realize, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. It's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. We'll cut it out. Don't worry about it. So then he makes a comment like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. All the behind the scenes stuff you didn't know what actually happened. All right, so we'll see.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time anybody got cut at an AAW symposium.
What's the worst incident you know of?
Well, with Jerry, I don't know, but me and Chris at the first one that we went to, I was over there demoing, and I had the tool sitting across the bed of the lathe, and I had just sharpened it on the Tormek. It went to fall, and I reached down to grab it, and it just went right through my hand. I'm clenched my hand. I'm like, Chris, throw me a bottle of thin CA. He's like, what? And I blood dripping. Oh, and he chunks me one.
So in case you didn't know, thin CA or just CA glue and medium does a great job of closing up wounds like that.
The same stuff the hospitals use.
Yep. Just don't spray it with activator, whatever you do.
You don't need to. The blood does it on its own.
It does and it doesn't. The thing that I found a problematic for me is that the blood still keeps moving through the CA while it's crystallizing. So then I thought I'd be a genius and spray it with activator. The heat that comes out of that activator, I was like, yeah, next time I'm just going to keep letting it go. I ain't going to worry about it.
Well, I had so much blood come out, it flashed from the water in the water in the blood. So it was like poof.
Yeah, and if you don't want to use an activator, Kasky would be the first one to tell you that just using a regular like spritz bottle of water will activate it just as fast.
Yep.
So if you don't want to
on green wood, it'll do that too.
So if you don't want to save 10% on CA glue activator this weekend at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, Kasky's got a trick for you, which is a spritzer bottle of water.
Well, I'll throw you another tip. If you once you open the CA glue, keep it in the refrigerator. It'll make it last longer, and you don't lose any of the properties.
Well, you can also just put it in a jar with like a old mayonnaise jar or mason jar. Just put a lid on it, but don't put the lid back on the cap.
So leave the lid off the cap.
Leave the little red lid off of it. Just drop it in another jar and put a lid on it, and it actually lasts longer.
Now, why is that with the cap? Why would that? I'm just.
I don't know, but it does. Heard people's tried, and I've tried it, and it definitely does better. And it also keeps the little stem from getting gummed up too. Because you put the cap on, it doesn't drift back in.
Okay.
So the tip doesn't get clogged up.
Thank you, Jerry, for leaving a like on both Facebook and YouTube. I am the guy who leaves the cap off and leaves it outside. And it's still, I'll go all the way to the very bottom of the bottle. I don't have issues.
Well, your shop isn't as moist as mine is.
Mine's outside.
Well, mine's, kind of like when it rains, it looks like there's a river running through it. So anyway.
I like how you wanted to compare how moist your shop was to mine, though. That's nice of you.
No, seriously, I got one of the metal buildings and water seeps in when it rains, and if it rains hard enough, it looks like there's a river coming in.
You should probably fix that.
I've tried and tried, but the expansion rates between metal and concrete slightly different.
Put a drip edge down at the bottom and a trench around your concrete.
I have that, but yet I can't get it to run off before it gets down into the groove in which it comes through.
I'm sure he's this.
Flex Seal does good for a while, but beyond that, it'll still bust it open and it'll run through it as well. And in the black tar stuff that you put on asphalt, it does great for a short period of time as well. Same problem. It'll crack eventually and let it back through.
So then the question would be, your lathes are in this area, right?
Yep.
So how do you control rust? Like, how do you clean it
That's
off?
like 320, 400 sandpaper and a block of wood, couple quick swipes, and go with it.
At Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, we also offer a product called Sand Flex Abrasive Blocks. Fantastic for all your rust needs in coarse, medium, and fine.
Yeah, but I can find the other sandpaper before I can find that sanding block.
That's also Klingspor abrasives.
Yes.
Available in rolls, sheets, discs, and any other forms that you may need.
In the bulk box.
The bulk box.
The
Bargain bin.
box.
The bargain box.
The bargain bin.
Scott shop's local, so he gets to pick what he wants out of there. Otherwise, you could buy the Klingspor Abrasives famous bargain box of scrap, $29.95 for a 20-pound box of miscellaneous abrasives.
That's right. Miscellaneous abrasives. It's also at woodworkingshop.com. Product is BB0001.
And we also offer a lathe roll of bargain box, which is fantastic for all you wood turners right now.
It may not be jam-packed with the gold, but it will have flexible sandpaper that is aluminum oxide to help you get the most sanding power for your money.
Because we're abrasive and proud of it at Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
You'd think we had that planned, but not even close. Not even close at all. That's hilarious. That's just how long we've been doing this for. That's right. Woodworkingshop.com. Oh, did you mention something about being abrasive and proud of it?
I did, Mike.
If you're abrasive and proud of it, you can also get your sticker and magnets at woodworkingshop.com under KWS Swag.
Like us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and pretty much most of the other social media platforms.
Outlets. Yeah. Do we have? No, I don't have that. That would have been good to put in there. But yeah, we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We have local stores on our Facebook page. We're on Instagram, even on TikTok. So if you're TikTok famous like Sterling Davis, please, by all means, tag us. All right.
U channel on bottom.
Cut outside edge off with Klingspor ceramic grinding discs. Oh, U channel. Yeah, okay. U channel. I'm thinking YouTube. What?
That's exactly where my brain went.
So Jerry, interesting story about Jerry is that I got him some ceramic cutoff discs to try, and he said that they actually, like, the metal, the sparks coming off from cutting melted his gloves like lava. That's how hot it was coming off and how fast it was cutting. Wall wash runs out instead of in. Okay.
It depends on how it was built to begin with, and you can't do that now. It's embedded in concrete.
Got to fix that. But yeah, so Sandflex blocks, fantastic purchase. Let me get some of those real quick here.
And I'll tell you, I've been using those in my own shop for years, and I've got 2 sets. And it's not just for metal. They're great for, porcelain, pretty much stainless steel. If you've got a sink that's rusted, I mean, those things have so many uses, and you can actually cut them with a box cutter and make smaller blocks out of them and use them for a variety of other things for getting in tight into small areas where gears are, interacting with each other. Just a really good product. And it's probably one of the most underrated things we offer, but probably one of the most versatile when it comes to just general cleanup.
And it's such a popular item that our own competitors actually carry it because there's no one else out there that has anything like it.
And all it is a rubber block with grit throughout the entire thickness, and it's all kind of baked in together, and that makes up the Sandflex block. There's a
It's an eraser with grit.
Yep. And so it is also impervious to chemicals as far as, if you want to use oils or if you want to use a cleaner or whatever you want to do to get rid of rust or anything that you're abrading, they work really good for that because they won't absorb it.
Yep.
Here's the set of 3, as Chris had mentioned, the coarse, medium, and fine. What is it, like 3 by 5 by 1 inch thick, roughly?
Yep.
And then when we talked about, it's basically a rubber eraser with sanding grit. It's all the way throughout it. So therefore, whenever you cut it, anything that you do with it, you'll always have an abrasive to it. And great for cleaning rust off of your tool surfaces, especially if there's a river running through your shop when it rains.
I think they're 2 by 3 actually.
2 by 3?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Let me check the website. That would be a smart place to go.
2 by 3 by 3/4.
Oh, look at you. Let's see if you're right. Because I think you are. And they are $11.95 for all 3. If you go to our competitors, they're much higher. Let's see, 3 by 2 by 3/4. Chris nails it. You win the lathe today. So sorry, JP Brown, but Chris wins the lathe for getting the Sandflex size correct. Scott,
I'm not sure if you can hear, but I have a massive storm just outside my window. So if you're hearing any raindrops, well, that's where they're coming from.
We just thought you didn't make it to the bathroom.
Well, I've got my chamber pot right here beside me. So,
yeah, we've gone down that road. Yeah, no, I was looking. The only 2 places right now in our area is at my house and your house. And we're not even close to each other, but both of us have a thunderstorm happening.
yeah.
And it's sunny here.
And Jerry, go ahead and pick up 2 sets. Have 1 set in your shop and 1 set in your travel box for when you go do demos. Because I promise you, you were talking about that stainless steel and how important it is to have a smooth surface on your tool rest. That those Sandflex blocks work really good for just cleaning up any little pitting or any areas on any tool rest. So if you're using a clubs version of something, you can quickly clean that up and have a real clean, smooth surface to operate off of.
And it's not like putting your wax and stuff on that's going to gum up afterwards, like your paste waxes. I know there's some guys at work that were refinishing guns, and they were wondering what they could use to clean the barrels. And I told them about them, and they went and grabbed them, and then they were able to use them on those and clean up the barrels where they got pit rusted on it and able to reblue it.
I got to find this picture Jerry had a long time ago. So at one point, he was into everything. You name it, he was there to help you do it. And there was I don't remember which beach it was, might have been Myrtle, but he was helping move a house, like an entire house. And I have a picture of him where he's standing on top of the peak of the roof, holding the traffic light wire and traffic light out of the way so the house could pass underneath it. Just kind of give you an idea of who Jerry is and what he does.
That was the 14th time he was electrocuted.
So if I'm not mistaken, the thing was still green too, which was even better. But I don't see it in my old. It's an old picture. It's been a while. But anyways, I will. I'm going to open this. If you have a Tormek or you have a bench grinder, if you have any kind of sharpening accessory, my number 1 tool that you need to have is the Tormek angle guide set. Reason being is that you have obviously the angles all around the outside perimeter, but what's more important is that you can set the diameter of your wheel with the kind of rounded cam looking, the one on the left. So let's say you had an 8-inch bench grinding wheel, you can then turn that to 8 inches. And then you select the degree you want, and then you put it on the tool. You will always have a flawless angle to whatever machine that you want to use. And they're relatively inexpensive. They're like $25.
And the notches up around the perimeter of that piece are handy for sort of locating and finding and identifying specific angles where you don't really know what they are to get you close.
Yep. So if it doesn't matter, bench grinder, Tormek, Wolverine system, whatever you're using, this will come in handy to make sure that your angle is precise. If you are that engineering mind who has to have a precise angle.
Well, I have the engineering mind, but I'm just too lazy. I use a Sharpie.
the Sharpie is the way to go by far. Yes, the street lights are probably going to be a lot heavier than you think. I have to agree with that. It looked heavy. I think it was 2 people up there on that roof too. Man, I wish I could find that photo, but it was good times. Really was. To sit and, because it must be a Jerry thing too. He's just as humble as Miesmer. And the fact that, he's done things, he's cool about it. No big deal. Standing on a roof holding the traffic light. Not a biggie. 15 minutes. What are we going to do? Can't believe we've been doing this as long as we have.
We should have got with our boss and had us get us some giveaways or something to auction off here.
Let me think about that for a minute, because really the reason we didn't have giveaways is there's no stock. That's the downside of it. There wasn't enough stock in the country to go around for people to buy as well as to give away things. So that was the issue. That's full transparency for you. Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
Hey, can you give away stickers?
We can give away stickers.
How about hats, Mike? How's he feel about hats?
Yeah, hats aren't happening yet. I've already submitted my request for apparel. So far, we have stickers and magnets and coasters. Let me bring that up now.
A turning smock would be a good option here.
Turning smocks are a good option. So we have tan and we have black.
And they are very similar to the ones that AAW sells, or that lighter weight material, so you don't get cooked in it in the summertime. But it does do a good job keeping all the dust and stuff off of you.
It has breathable pits, so when you're operating, you got plenty of airflow under your pits. So
what I was wearing when I was doing the turning video or the sharpening videos.
Yep, you had one in black, yes. And then Jerry Miesmer had one in tan. So I'm going to get both of those now, because we do have our own turning smocks. This one is limited in stock for certain sizes and color, but we have more on the way. There we go. But Chris and I both have one, and they actually are pretty lightweight, functional. I wouldn't say I would go outside in the black one, because I have, and that's not comfortable at all. But for turning, they are nice. Plus, they have a pocket in the back that's big enough to hold a large phone, which I find to be great. So you have the pocket in the front that it does have a flap to keep chips out, as well as a pocket in the back. Ooh, that one you can kind of see. There's the pit area cooling vents. Should come up with a better name.
They call them pit vents in raincoats. But also, I use them when I'm cutting my blocks up and stuff with the chainsaw, because it helps keep the chips out of your shirt from that too.
There you go. And let's see. Here's the pockets in the back. Give you an idea. Forgot there's 2 pockets. So if you're left or right-handed, you will be able to save things in your back pocket.
A great place to put your chuck key, so you always know where it's at.
There you go. There's a turning tip for the day. It's a great idea.
You should make a starburst and have it titled "Turning Tip of the Day."
So that your number 4 Allen wrench that you use to change your chuck jaws with too.
Let's see here. Okay, sorry. Let me catch up on. So he moved 5 houses off the beach. Hasn't everyone done that? Yeah, that was just a regular Sunday. What are you talking about? Send out a do-it-yourself sandpaper kit. Some sandpaper, some paper, some sand, and some glue.
Or duct tape.
I really need to proofread these comments before I read them, because then I started laughing, realizing what it was saying. So, Steve, what is the Klingspor equivalent of abrasive manufacturer sanding disc like the mesh? Ours, instead of Abernet, would be called Klingnet. And you can find that on our website. And right now, 3-inch Klingnet discs are on sale, 20% off, as well as the rest of our 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch in Green Tech, AZ Plus, Gold, and Heavyweight. All of them are on sale, 20% off this weekend.
And we also offer the Klingnet in rolls as well.
2-inch by 5 meters, I believe it is. But yes, that's what we would consider our abrasiveness. Let's see. Okay, good. Has that storm passed for you yet? Sounds quieter now.
The thunder's toned down, but the rain is still coming down.
Yes, it is. Look at that. I got my own coming again. So what? Okay, this is a very interesting, weird thing about Chris and I don't live near each other, but the storms that happen in my house will eventually go straight to his house because he's in line for where I live to where he lives. So I know it's coming. I'll send you some love. Sold. Take my money. Yep, ClingNet is very good. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is polishing. If you want to polish with it, it is a little bit more aggressive. Any of the mesh products out there are going to be a little bit more aggressive, in my opinion, if you're trying to do finish sanding. What did you say? The Fusion Foam would be a good choice for finish sanding? Okay.
Yeah.
And Fusion Foam is our proprietary product of a foam with, hold on, I do have a picture of that, with the grit directly applied to the foam, so therefore it doesn't peel off like other foam products do.
Okay, one thing that I like to use the Fusion Foam, if I'm putting on like the Walrus Oil or Mahoney's Oil, I like to put it on with it and rub it in with it.
Yep.
With the Fusion Foam itself?
Mm-hmm. On the lathe. Put a couple drops in and turn it on and let it kind of work it and sand it in.
And that Fusion Foam, the type of foam that it is impervious to the chemicals and to oils and water. So you can use that, any of those as a lubricant or as a burnishing tool. So it works really well.
Is it dishwasher safe?
Always.
It might sand your dishwasher, so I don't know.
That's what Jerry asked.
All depends. Hold on a second here.
The heat may cause more adverse effects than anything else. So I might not put it in a dishwasher, Jerry.
Says you.
Well, I mean, you know.
That and his wife may not like it, and it may not go with his happy marriage tips.
Yeah. Chris has pro marriage tips for a happy marriage. So the Fusion Foam is a nice close-cell foam with no backing on the grain. The grain is directly applied to the foam. So that's what we're talking about. Fusion Foam from Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
Huge fan.
Yep. And it lasts a long time. Due to the fact that it's on foam, the abrasive has a relief. So that way, if you push down too hard, you won't wear it out quickly. It's good stuff. Really is good stuff.
Yeah, the only time I've found issue is if you're trying to sand something that's kind of got a sharp edge, like if you haven't already pre-broken the edges on your wood. If you're dealing with a sharp edge, it can create a little cut in the foam. But other than that, it's a very good product. I use it a lot in my shop.
Oh, I know something we can go over. Let me hold on. So if anyone has ever purchased the bargain box that we mentioned earlier, we have figured out that, you know, there is times when you want to be able to tell what the abrasive numbers on the back of the sandpaper are that you get. So we decided that we would show you what numbers are what and where they are located. So that way you can make a better decision on what you actually have in your hand if you order our bargain box, because not every manufacturer is the same as how they do it, but this is how we do it. For the most part, you're going to see the backing of the paper kind of look like this, where you have your material number is the largest number on the back. So PL31 in this instance is the material type. P80 is going to be your grit. And then that really small number, if you can see that, the 146 is actually a batch number. That's not the grit. So sometimes you may get an abrasive to where the batch code is in the certain spot. So you think it's 146 grit. All of the grits will end in 0 other than 36, 24, and 12. Everything else, though, usually has a 0 at the end. So that's a good way to be able to tell if it's a grit or if it's a batch code. Most Klingspor abrasives will have a P in front of it. That is a particular type of grading system from Europe called the FIPA system. So it uses the P. If it does not have a P in front of it, it's a United States standard or CAMI system, but it's still going to be the second largest number no matter what the abrasive is.
And keep in mind, there are other manufacturers that use other grading systems, like 3M. Sometimes on some of their materials will use the Micron grading system. But for the most part, you're going to see either P or no P in front of the grit, and that'll be it. And micron's easily identifiable because it's got a weird U shape with a line through it, so you'll easily know that's micron.
So in this case here, LS312 is the material, P150 is the grit. And then you'd have a much smaller number for your batch code. But that just kind of gives you an idea of how to read the bargain box, which, you know, when you get them, they're just rolls like this. So not always are you going to, like in this particular one here, you see the arrows. There is a grit as you unwind them. But that's what you're going to look for, because we get a lot of questions on that as far as, you know, hey, how do I tell the grit? I got 146 grit. Remember, it'll end in a 0 unless it's 12, 24, or 36. Everything else is going to be an even 0 number.
Yep.
And there's the monster.
Yes. Hey,
Set the alarm clock.
Most of all your papers are dishwasher safe. A great way to clean it out to get more life. Most. He can't type. So, yes. And we mentioned that before, that a lot of them are washable. You just have to make sure you let them dry. The only ones that really aren't washable are going to be anything with a paperback, because that paper, just like you get any kind of paper wet, it's going to wrinkle, and then it becomes very weak. And then in that case there, it's going to tear or shred apart on you very easily when you go to try to use it. So try not to get those wet. But for the most part, your cloth products are going to be able to get wet and then be able to dry. The other thing we can say is that if you have a belt, typically belts will have a shelf life. And eventually the tape will come off on the back and they will lose their beltness. They'll just become a strip. The best thing we can say is to keep them away from moisture. You know, so don't hang them up on the shop wall. Try to keep them someplace where the moisture is very low or it's climate controlled of some sort. That way your belts will last a lot longer. I have some just for testing purposes that are now 10 years old and they still work great on the belt sander. But the way I've done that is by keeping them in the closet in the bedroom, because that way there's really no transfer, or the moisture doesn't come into play. It's very temperature controlled for the most part at all times, and it's not in the basement. Now, if I kept them in the basement, they'd probably break within 2 years, no problem. What do you think, Chris? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just want to hit on your actual technical term. So when the belt breaks, it loses its beltness. I want to just think about that for a second. It loses its beltness.
It becomes a sheet.
Okay, so it loses its beltness. That's what I want to make sure of. But yeah, you can also keep it in an airtight container if you don't want to keep it in your house. Putting it in like a Rubbermaid box or something with a lid that can be sealed off. That can also help extend the life a little bit. Just want to keep it out of that humidity and the crazy temperature and fluctuations. That'll make a world of difference. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Or keep it in your bedroom closet.
I know it sounds crazy, but at the same time, up on the upper shelf in the corner, that's where you forget about all kinds of stuff up there.
Hey, most of us into the bedroom to get a belt.
Most of us can't reach that top shelf, so in your closet, that's probably more than fine.
That's more than normal for me. Okay, fair enough.
It's eye level.
Yeah, 6'4" does have its things. Best self-adhesive disc on the market, hands down. That is a Klingspor disc, that's for sure. And yeah, well, your discs turn to never release if you leave on. Okay, there's a good point. There's a good technical thing we can go into real quick before the end. My rule for using sticky back or PSA discs is that when you're done using them with your operation, take the disc off while it's still warm. Don't let it cool off. The glue on the back is actually made to get more sticky as you use them, as it heats up. It also means that as it cools, it hardens and solidifies the glue, and then therefore it makes it very hard to get off of there. So if you're almost done using a disc, whether this is on a disc sander, so a 12-inch disc sander, a 6-inch disc sander, or a random orbit, go ahead and peel that off when you're done using it, right after you're done using it while it's still warm. That way it'll be a lot easier to peel off. You won't have a lot of glue transfer, and the next one you stick on will be ready to go.
Also, if you happen to forget and leave it, take it and put it on a block of wood and heat it back up to pull it off. I've had to do that numerous times.
Yep. If you do it all at one shot, save yourself a lot of steps and trouble. And then, of course, if you're if you're sanding in shifts, like in a factory setting where you're going to sand and then you put down the sander and walk away, the next person who comes up, it's going to be cool by that time. They're going to try to pull it off. So to save yourself for the next person, that'll save you again on the next shift rotation, go ahead and peel it off as soon as you're done. Yeah, I can imagine a 20-inch disc would be a nightmare to change.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like you were saying, this 20-inch disc. I use 10-inch a lot of times if I'm trying to demo how to sharpen on a lathe. I've basically took my face plate and put a block on it, turned it around, and put the 10-inch sticky backs on it, and I use it to demo sharpening. So you don't, though I'm sharpening, I'm not going to change it every time, but when I do have to change it, I'll take a block of wood and turn it on and just heat the piece up pretty good. And I can normally get it to come off fairly decent. You have a couple spots, but most of the time it'll still come off.
Very good. Well, it's coming up on that time when going live will kick us off. You can only go live for so long before the social medias remove us from going live. So it's been an incredible 4 hours, gentlemen. I thank you very much for joining me. I thank everyone for watching and joining us in the chat and being participation as well. Jerry, I have to say, I think you've outdone everybody, and we appreciate all the comments. Really, we do. It helps us. You know that. And so for everyone at the AAW, definitely check out our booth. We'll be back tomorrow from 10 to 2. And I am Mike Z for Klingspor's Woodworking Shop.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Scott.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
As the world turns.